and then you can call the meeting to order.
Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome members of the public and Design Review Commission, Planning Commission, and staff. It's 7:04, and we could call the September 19th Joint Planning Commission Design Review Commission meeting to order. If you're interested in making a comment tonight, you can reference on page 1 of the agenda how you can make the comment. And we can start with roll call. So we'll go through the Planning Commission, and then Chair Gray, I'll turn it over to you for the Design Review Commission. So Commissioner Heising.
Present.
Commissioner Sturm.
Present.
Vice Chair Labange.
Present.
And I'm Chair Radnich. I'm present. Commissioners Mason and Farsan from Planning Commission are excused tonight. So we do have a quorum of 4. And Chair Gray, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Cass?
Present.
We Commissioners Seidel and Hadaloo are excused, will not be joining us this evening. We are expecting Commissioner Sim and Commissioner Chair Gray is here.
Great, thank you. Do we have a motion from Planning Commission to adopt tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I'm gonna go with a motion by Commissioner Heising, a second by Vice Chair Labange, and we'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Heising,
Aye.
Commissioner Sturm,
Aye.
Vice Chair Labange,
Aye.
and Chair Radnich. I'm an aye. Public comments. So item 4 in tonight's agenda. This is for items not on this or an upcoming agenda within the purview of the commission tonight. I will look to staff to see if there's any hands raised for public comment.
If you'd like to comment not on an item that's on tonight's agenda, please go ahead, raise your hand now. Seeing none.
Okay, thank you. Item 5, consent calendar, 5A, it's the draft minutes from the August 22nd Planning Commission meeting. Do we have a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
Can I have a question, Chair?
Yeah. Mhm.
Were they in the package? They were? Okay. I'm just realizing that I didn't review it, but I did not see those in the Dropbox download. So I will probably abstain then, because I didn't go through it yet. But that shouldn't stop us, I don't think.
I'll move the item.
Okay, we'll call vote. Actually.
Second.
Okay, oh yeah, sorry, first and second. If Vice Chair Labange is abstaining from voting, can 3 members vote? This is a question for staff, or do we need to? We can, okay.
You can. It would be a 3-0-1, so 3 affirmative, none against, and 1 abstention. That would carry. You're also welcome to continue it to the next meeting to get additional commissioners to vote if you'd like.
Okay. I did hear a motion by Commissioner Heising and a second by Commissioner Sturm. So let's please just move forward with the roll call vote. Commissioner Heising,
Aye.
Commissioner Sturm,
Aye.
and Chair Radnich, aye. So, and Vice Chair Labange is abstaining. So 3-0-1. Okay, moving to item 6, continue public hearings. There's none. And item 7, New public hearing 7A, L04-21, Lyman is applicant, LR5 zoning, to request for land use, hillside development, design review permit, and variances. So tonight we'll be reviewing the proposed project. Right now we're conducting the public hearing and then provide comments and feedback to the applicant. So we will be making a motion at the end of this. Planning Commission will be making a motion, but we will make sure that Design Review Commission has a chance to provide comments and Planning Commission has a chance to provide comments, and then we'll make a motion at the end. So I would like to welcome Nancy for a presentation.
Good evening, commissioners. The item, oh, sorry, I forgot to share my screen. Greg, can I get access to share my screen, please? The item before you is land use application L0421 for 3040 Camino Diablo. They're requesting a land use permit for community assembly use and education activity at the site. The subject property is on the north side of Camino Diablo, near the Lafayette Walnut Creek border, just north of the Highway 24. It's an undeveloped lot within the LR5 low residential single family zoning district within the Hillside Overlay District and has a recorded scenic and conservation easement encompassing the northern portion of the lot. As you can see on this image right here, this is the scenic and conservation easement. None of the proposed work is proposed within this easement area. Here are photos of the neighborhood context. This is the property coming from the western approach and neighboring properties across the street on the south side of Camino Diablo. The subject property, the project's proposing new construction of a 2,400 square foot building with a max height of 18.5 feet to the ridge of height. This is the building with a detached 450 square foot dwelling unit at the rear, an outdoor gathering space that they call the amphitheater, and 8 parking spaces at the front. This is a blow up of the dwelling unit at the rear, and this is the ridge line looking down onto the development below Camino Diablo. The proposed work will require land use permit for the use, variances for construction within the required 50-foot required setbacks, and variances to reduce the parking requirement, and hillside development, design review, and grading permits. Here are renderings of the front of the building and of the side of the building from the western and eastern approaches, with landscaping concealing a good portion of the building and the dwelling unit further behind. Staff received no public comment since publication of the report. Overall, the use is low intensity and compatible with the neighborhood, and the siting was designed to minimize grading and disturbance on the site. Agency referral comments for the commission to consider are to relocate parking to the rear to meet required ADA spaces, introduce more permeable materials, formalize on-street parking, provide a passenger drop-off zone, and provide a no parking fire lane signage for the fire department. These are forwarded to the applicant for review and consideration, and staff recommends the commissions review the proposal and provide comments and feedback for the applicant to make any necessary adjustments prior to planning commission final action. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. I will first ask the Design Review Commission if there's any questions for staff, and then we'll move to Planning Commission for clarifying questions for staff. Chair Gray, please.
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions for Nancy. Nancy,
Wait a minute, John, if we don't have a quorum, we're not allowed to speak.
was that right?
No, you are, You're simply not going to convene a design review commission meeting and take action on it, but you can act as advisory comments, just like you could for a study session at the DRC if you didn't yet have a quorum at that meeting. So you can speak, but it's advisory from members of the design review commission. You're not going to be taking a formal action tonight.
Sorry.
Okay, thanks. So Nancy, you, regarding the parking, you were supportive of the applicant's proposal to reduce parking as a way to help reduce impact on the site. I wonder if you have estimated the total parking capacity, including on-street parking, that might serve this site.
I don't have the number of what they're proposing on street, but they are proposing 8 on the site. They don't expect for it to be completely used when they do have events on the property. They expect the people coming to be dropped off by their parents.
Okay, maybe I'll ask the same question of the applicant when the time comes. And then also regarding the city engineer's suggestion to place the parking behind the building rather than in front, I'm wondering if that could be accomplished and still maintain the 50-foot front yard setback that is included in the current proposal, which I think is beneficial.
It is possible. It would just move the building closer to the front and more grading towards the rear.
And anyway, there may be some give and take there in that particular recommendation, although I do understand it. Okay, that's my only questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cass, did you have any
No.
questions? Okay. I'd like to planning commission if there's any clarifying questions for staff. Commissioner Sturm, I did see your hand up if you want to go, and then Vice Chair LaBonge.
Nancy, do you have any more, like a more understanding about whether well, first of all, I couldn't find anywhere what the dwelling unit, how that's proposed to be used. And then right now it seems that it doesn't have sufficient fire access. And I was wondering, like, is that even possible to be able to provide that? And would that conflict with moving the parking toward the back? Like, has staff thought about that in more depth or talked to the applicant?
I did forward the comments to the applicant, and they said that they were looking into reconfiguring the access to the dwelling unit at the rear. I believe they had mentioned that they were going to modify its location, but I wasn't provided any updates on the changes.
Okay. And the dwelling unit?
The dwelling unit, they are proposing to rent it out in order to help support the, I guess, mortgage payments or whatnot in the front.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair LaBonge.
And Nancy, on the term of use, there's a paragraph that says once a land use permit is issued, it runs with the land unless a condition of approval sunsets the use. My question is, can a land use be personal to an applicant, or other than run with land be in such a way that if the applicant changed, so I'll just leave it at that and save the rest for the discussion part, but that's my question.
The operator or the property owner can change provided that the use is consistent. So in the case of a car rental facility, and it's granted to Enterprise, if that is sold to Hertz or Avis or another, that use permit would continue to be in good standing and would continue through transfers of the property or transfers of the business owner.
So what would you call this then, if this doesn't get in the discussion? My follow-up is, what would this activity be? Like Boy Scout camp or troop, you know, I mean, how defined is it? Because if it was that defined, that would be relatively personal to what they're doing, and that would satisfy the question I have. If it's more generic, it would be a discussion that I'd want to talk about more when we discuss.
So Nancy, the use classification is community assembly and education in the media code.
Yes.
So if the facility and property were to transfer to a different organization, Girl Scouts of America, or another entity wherein their operations fell into that land use classification, that it would continue to be a use permit in good standing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for staff? Commissioner Heising?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Kind of related to what DRC Chair brought up regarding the parking. Nancy, can you explain a little more behind the request for the parking to be moved to the back of the building? Because I think I kind of think it's more appropriate that the parking be in the front so that the building's set back further from the street. And then also twofold, if the parking's in the back, then you've got this big expanse of asphalt right next to the amphitheater, and it kind of takes away from what I would see as the experience at the amphitheater, having a big old parking lot next to it. So I was just curious as to the impetus of the comment and how that came about.
That comment was actually from the transportation engineer when I sent out the plans and application for agency referral. My review, I did not recommend the parking be in the rear, but that was a separate comment from a different department.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nancy, is the applicant here tonight?
Yeah, Robert Lyman and James Crinian are part of the project team.
Okay. We can invite the project team. I'll wait for them to join and then I'll finish speaking.
Mr. Lyman is on his way in. And Mr. Crinian as well.
Good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear.
Perfect. Oh yeah, we can see you now. Welcome. The applicant team will have 10 minutes to share your presentation and tell us about your project.
Great. James, you're currently more involved in Troop 224 than myself, and maybe you could give a brief introduction about our troop.
Sure, I'll keep it real brief, and we'll get to the meat of the presentation with Robert. I'm James Crinian. I'm the committee chair for Troop 224B and G. There's actually two troops that will use this facility. We've been around we'll be celebrating our 70th year in Lafayette next year. We started off in a hut off of Spring Hill. That hut was subsequently destroyed in the mid-'80s. We cut a lease deal with the school district to use a hut behind Happy Valley Elementary School. But given the growth of the elementary school population, the school district has been very kind to us, but they've given us about a 5-year window, and we're at about year 5 now, where the lease will run out the end of June. We had some fantastic benefactors who searched high and low through the city of Lafayette and found this property. So we purchased it and we're developing it for a permanent hut. Right now we serve 45 active Boy Scouts, 15 active Girl Scouts, so roughly 60 Scouts. We really can't grow in our current facility, which is a 900 square foot hut behind the gym of Happy Valley. And so this facility will allow us to grow and serve more scouts in the community. With that, I'll turn it back over to Robert.
Thank you, James. Yeah, we're very excited to be here. Very thrilled that we have this opportunity to make a permanent home for Troop 224. Thanks, Nancy. We've been working with you for many, many months to get to this point, and thanks for your cooperation and help. Let me just go right to some of the questions that have been raised. Yeah, the parking, we're asking for the variance because the demand on the city for parking for this use is quite small. The kids who attend our meetings are driven by their parents or they ride their bike. A few of them who've reached driving age will drive themselves, but for the most part, they carpool. So the only people parking would be the adult leaders and the occasional scout who drives. So it's also very infrequent because our meetings are generally, as a troop, once a month. We'll have weekend short-term get-togethers before we head off on an adventure. And then we'll have award ceremonies that we have several times a year. So the demand is quite small. So we felt smaller parking lot is best, so we don't have this sea of asphalt just sitting there vacant. So the location of the parking, you know, it's interesting. We got this comment about the fire department access to the dwelling unit and totally missed this requirement. So we have to get a fire truck within 150 feet of all sides of the dwelling unit. So we have to, in order to build that where it is, get a fire lane up alongside the hut. And I did a drawing that shows one option. And if I can get, if I can share screen, I can show that to the group.
You're enabled.
And let's see.
Or I can do it, Robert, too. I've got it up and I've got your screen.
I've got so many windows here. Oh, how about this guy?
I'm on it.
Show that guy. Here we go.
There you go.
All right. So this is one option, moving essentially all the parking to the back. This, I believe, will meet the requirements of the fire department for hose access and more. This gives them better access than the minimum. And what this does is it pushes the hut 5 feet to the west. We have to change the proportions slightly, but it's basically the same design. We are looking at eliminating the chamfered corner just because it's a simpler, cheaper building. We have an accessible parking stall up front, and then eight stalls in the back, one of which would serve the dwelling unit. We did have to push our outdoor meeting area, and I like the comment about being sensitive to that. By moving it over here, we still do have a nice open area for outdoor meetings. I think that would still work. And then the other compromise, it does move the hut closer to the street. I think this is about 30 feet instead of 50 feet. Now, this could still be pushed back a little further. We might lose a stall. We might need to chamfer the corner again. But we're just, you know, kind of trading off the demand for parking, an efficient hut that doesn't dig into the hillside too much, because that's expensive work with the grading and retaining, and yet screening and softening the building with views from the street. So this, I'm just throwing out for comment. One other request we'd like to make is the flexibility to make a slightly larger dwelling unit to increase the pool of people who might want to rent this, maybe a non-standard kind of dwelling configuration. We're trying to get 2 bedrooms rather than just a small 1 bedroom. It just gets elongated and kind of pushed to the north a bit. Let's see. I think that did answer, I recall the questions that were asked. Any other questions I can answer?
Okay, thank you. You do have a few more minutes on your 10 minutes, but if your team is good with that, we'll move and we'll ask you a few questions and then we'll open up for public comment. So, staff, do you mind stopping the screen share, or Mr. Lyman, do you mind stopping just so we can see everyone's faces? Thank you. Are there any questions from the Design Review Commission for the applicant team?
Yes.
And then we'll move to Planning Commission questions. So Mr. Case and then Chair Gray, please.
My question is, your report says that 50 to 60 people will attend award banquets. How many vehicles you are expecting on that type of occasion?
Well, that kind of event will have more drivers. So, you know, you don't get, for an award ceremony, you don't get everyone attending. So you might get 40.
We typically hold them 3 times a year. September, January, and May. September is a bigger one because more kids earn awards, more scouts earn awards over the summer. And then you might add in 1 or 2 Eagle Court of Honors, which is the highest rank that will be held there. So you're talking minimum 3, probably maximum 5 of these events a year.
Okay, and so roughly how many vehicles are we talking about? Are we talking about a dozen? Or are we talking about 20?
I'm trying to think. The last time we held it was at St. Perpetua, and we only filled up the front part of their parking lot. So maybe that's 20 cars, 22.
Okay. That's all my questions.
Probably about 20 max, be my guess.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chair Gray.
So I had the exact same question as Commissioner Cass, but the follow-up is, have you looked at the on-street parking, and do you believe that between your on-site parking and the on-street that can be reasonably managed?
Yes, we've looked at the on-street parking. The public sidewalks extend way to the west on our side of Camino Diablo. We'd be happy to do a study that shows how many cars can be safely parked on street adjacent to our site.
You know, if you are having nighttime events or, you know, events after dark in the winter season, it's pretty dark and remote feeling. There's no street lights up there as far as I could see. So parking across the street would be a safety question. So just something to think about. There's
definitely no parking restrictions on either side of the road, all the way down to, I can't think of the name of the road below, but the intersection. So there's, you know, essentially, I hear your point about the dark, but yeah, there's no parking restrictions or red zones at all on that street.
Okay, no more questions, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Planning Commission, Commissioner Sturm.
Yeah, my main concerns are surrounding parking and drop off too. It's such a small frontage. I was thinking that if the majority of scouts are getting dropped off by their parents, it sure would be nice to have a circular, like pull in, pull out type of configuration. So I'm just trying to visualize. I mean, I assume people, like you were saying, if you have 40 kids in attendance, I mean, 20 kids would mean that half of them are carpooling or whatnot. But I'm just trying to picture, I mean, I think that feels optimistic to me. So I'm trying to picture that many kids being dropped off and how that would work.
Is it possible to stripe a section of the curb on the street as a loading zone, a passenger loading zone?
Yeah, that would be my recommendation on the east side of our driveway. Because, you know, we don't want to mess with the aesthetics of the hill as much. And like Robert alluded to, we don't want to dig into the hill too much or too little, but it'd be real easy to stripe a 2-car loading zone right there on the east side of our driveway. And people could easily pull in, drop off their scouts and pull out without having to turn around and do 3 turns in our parking lot.
Okay.
So I think that was, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We did get a comment from transportation engineer that would be advisable to have a drop-off area identified.
And then just one other question. With the dwelling unit, do you foresee, and this is just out of curiosity, do you foresee the resident of that unit like helping caretake for the property or anything like that, or separate deal?
No, we looked at a couple of different models where people have donated working land or camps to the scouts. And most of those models include a different source of revenue. And so given the housing situation, this was a good idea to come up with an ADU to help us, really fund the operating expense of the property.
And in terms, I like seeing the bike parking. Do you think that that's realistic that people are going to be biking there? Are there kids from like over by Acalanes or?
Yeah, we pull mainly from I'm in the Saranap, Burton Valley. Burton Valley is probably too far to bike. I know I'm going to make my kids bike. We also pull a lot from the Acalanes neighborhood where Spring Hill is.
Okay.
When I was a scoutmaster years ago, I, as a leader, rode my bike to the scout meetings. Just kind of setting a good example. So maybe you'll get an adult or two.
Thank you.
I do have a couple of questions, but I'll first look to the other commissioners. Vice Chair Labange and then Commissioner Heising, please.
I'm generally supportive of it, and I think it's a great location, especially for the youth and the Boy Scouts. It seems like a good fit. I do have a little bit of concern, not so much with parking with your regular stuff, but it would be on if there was ever. I would think the opportunity to rent out the facility might come up, and being somewhat probably perennially cash starved, you'd want to do that. I'm assuming that. I might be wrong. So I don't know if that would be allowed by your use permit. So maybe the city could weigh in on that. But if it was, I think we'd want to look at the parking a little more, or just be aware, or somehow bracket in so we don't have an unintended consequence. What we see right now makes sense to me, but if all of a sudden something that's drawing 400 people that seemed to be a good idea it turns out to not be a good idea.
That's a great point, and we had considered allowing other troops to possibly use it for their events. And if I'm not mistaken, maybe Nancy, well, you guys would all know this, if this is a conditional use permit, right? So if there does become an issue down the road, then you can bring us back before the city commission and say, hey, you guys got to make some adjustments. You got an issue. Is that fair? Is that how it works?
Well, if I'll let the staff talk to that, but let me ask you on that point, maybe as a precursor, would there be a number that you guys could say commit to that says, look, we won't do anything over this number of people anticipated, and then maybe the conditional use permit would proactively state that. I'm not positive that can work, but that would be a way to just kind of get in front of it right now, so you never plan anything with anyone who would do more than some, not nefariously, but just because we hadn't talked about it.
Well, we can certainly talk about that on our end and see what our plans could be. and discuss that with staff.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back, we go back and look at it, but it's a 2,400 square foot split level facility. We're never going to have 400 people in there. I'm not, we'll look at it. We'll look at what we haven't even thought of what the maximum number of people could be in there, but it's not 400.
Well, and
Yeah.
excuse me, Vice Chair, just to interject, maybe we could look to staff, and that's something staff would be able to comment on. I would assume that under the code for safety, there's fire requirements for maximum occupancy for buildings based on size and use type.
That is true. And that was going to be my question to Mr. Lyman, is what's the maximum occupancy of the primary space? We don't know what that is at this point in time. Perhaps Mr. Lyman does. If not, we can find out from the fire district.
We haven't gotten to that level of detail yet, but we can certainly work with the fire department to establish what that would be.
And just finishing on my point, then I think that's a good maybe limiter for the building, but I don't think this property necessarily needs to be limited to the building. So I think we should still keep the idea open for how would you constrain the overall property such that you would have a number that says, we'll maintain the by code for the building, but we would not, for instance, rent this out to any group that plans to have more than X on the property, let alone underneath the building code for the building. So that's what I'm thinking. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Heising, did you have any clarifying questions? Because then after public comment, we'll bring it for further discussion and comments.
Yes, just one question. So I understand from reading the staff report, the color red is a typical color of a scout hut. I noticed the Brazzoni one in Moraga is red. However, the one by Lafayette Elementary School is brown, and the log cabin, if you will. And the reason I bring it up, I'm looking at sheet A6 of the packet, and you've got the Lafayette Public Works Facility, you've got some townhomes to the south and west, and then they're all kind of browns and gray colors. So I'm just wondering, if we've got a structure 30 feet off the curb and it's kind of a red color, is it going to stick out? And how wedded is the troop to having the building be red?
Well, James, you want it?
I'll start.
Yeah, okay.
So Gary, our original hut was red, and you're right, it is a traditional scout color. And we thought that given its location, we felt pretty strongly we'd like to have it that color. But I want to hear from Robert, and obviously it's not the end of the world, but it was something that was thought through given our historical roots in Lafayette and how our original hut was red.
Well, it is kind of a bold statement, and it is kind of saying, yeah, we are a scout facility. But the comment is, I understand, and we can subdue it. We can make it a red that is more grayed out and darker, or we can, there are other colors that are associated with scouting. Greens certainly are a range that is seen a lot on the uniforms and in scouting. So we can also go that direction.
Or we could just mute it a little bit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I do have a couple of questions, and excuse me, I'm just getting my notes over here. I am curious, and this might be a question for the applicant team or staff, but if 17 parking spots are required, how did you come up with 8? I'm just curious of the thought process behind 8.
8 was all we could fit on the site, and have a reasonable, well, first of all, 8 was what worked with where the building should go in our mind, and how much work it would take to fit an appropriate sized hut on the site, given that the hillside starts to slope up dramatically once you get too far in. And the other factor is really how many cars are needed to support the hut for a typical meeting. And it's not much more than 8 people that actually drive and need to park their car.
Okay.
So those are the 2 factors.
Okay, thanks. And then correct me if I'm wrong, but there doesn't appear to be an ADA spot in those 8, is there? I couldn't tell. Sorry, I'll show you which figure I'm looking at. A2.1. And what I'm getting at is, I guess I'm curious if you're already requesting a variance to be closer to the street instead of the 50 feet, could one of those spots be extended slightly to accommodate ADA access if you're already requesting a variance anyway?
Yes. Yeah, for our original proposal, we designed the grading so that one of the stalls could become a van accessible parking stall, especially if this becomes a public accommodation that would be required.
Okay, thank you. And then I do like the idea of the loading zone. I am a mom with kids. I also frequent Walnut Creek, and you get to some parking lots and you pull in and there's nowhere to turn around. And I could see if people were trying to all drop off around the same time, even if it's 6 cars trying to drop off at the same time, not having a way to turn around and having to reverse into traffic. I personally don't like that idea. I think it's dangerous, especially with kids and it being dark, them running behind cars. So I do support the loading zone, but I also had a question about, and this might be for staff too, but are overnights allowed? And are there any type of use, like time of day use restrictions for this type of project? That might be a question for staff.
There are no statutory requirements in the municipal code around time limits for community serving facilities like this. Certainly the noise ordinance would apply. And so there wouldn't necessarily be any restrictions on overnighting. There could be as a part of the use permit, but not under the code that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions. So at this time, Nancy, if we could please, oh, wait, sorry, I lost my train of thought for a sec. We have not opened it up for public comment yet, right? That was the original public comments. Okay. If we could please open this item up for public comment, and then applicant team, after public comment closes, you'll have 5 minutes to address any comments that were received.
Ellie Hudson is the first speaker, followed by Randy.
Okay, welcome, Mr. Hudson. Can you hear us?
Good evening, Chair Radnich and Gray and commissioners. I had not planned to speak on this item, but I'm inspired by it. Full disclosure, I spent over a decade in scouting adult leadership. Scouting is a terrific program. I don't know how many of you have actually been intimately involved, but I saw dozens of kids come in too shy to look you in the eye and leave scouting not only as confident and competent leaders, but also as good citizens. Scouting, particularly because it has been expanded to include girls, should be accommodated by Lafayette because it is exactly the type of constructive program our youth need. And it will provide them with lessons and values that will benefit them and their communities throughout their lives. I would urge you to tweak the details, but make this project work for approval. Please do not put up roadblocks that make it impractical or unduly burdened. For the scouts, I would suggest you consider carefully whether you really want to become landlords. In the great state of California, that can become a nightmare. And with the evolution of housing laws, it is likely to become worse. But good luck to you, and thank you for what you provide for our youth.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Are there any questions for the speaker? Okay, thank you.
Just so you know, it
Randy,
is you.
I'm sorry. Was there a question that I didn't see?
No, I just want to let you know that Eugene is not available tonight.
Ah, thank you.
Welcome. Randy, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, commissioners and applicant team. I wanted to say this is my first time joining one of these meetings, and I greatly appreciate all the questions that the commissioners are asking. My name is Randy Turner. I am a resident of Camino Diablo Villas. I'm also on the board. That is the townhome community that's kitty corner to this proposed development. I support what the applicants are trying to accomplish. I've lived in this area for 12 years, and I understand the rigorous process that they need to go to. However, I would ask that the commissioners strongly look into this parking situation. Having lived here for 12 years, Camino Diablo is a thoroughfare. People like to take it to cut off the freeway. There are a lot of residents that do live in this area. If we have a situation where there's a loading zone on the side of the street, we're cutting into bicycle access, not only for pedestrians and adults that live in the area, but also the children that access the high school there. I strongly encourage you guys to consider possibly a roundabout or increasing parking spaces within their community. It becomes very difficult in this area with the tennis club, with Acalanes High School, with the swimming facility that's down the street. All three of those, and now adding a community scouting hut here, is going to impact and drastically back up the parking that is already occurring now. We live in this community where a lot of our residents have to park on the streets, and at times are parking further down the tennis club, almost half a mile away from their home, because the tennis club builds up here. So we're talking about a lot of traffic added to the already busy road that a lot of people think is quiet, which is not. So please consider this when you guys are discussing and approving the parking variance. I would rather see more parking increase. I understand that cuts into our beautiful hillside, but applicants, I would ask you to consider the residents that are already living here and look at that this is going to be a home for you guys as well as already our home. So let's try to share the space and come up with a situation that is going to not only meet your needs, because I don't want to prevent you from having your needs met, but are also going to be considerate of what's happening currently within our community and within this street. Also, please keep in mind that there are a lot of children, and you guys are going to be adding to that. There are a lot of children in this community, and having people park on the opposite side of your hut, I just see, at least once a quarter we have a dead deer because people drive at least 50 to 60 miles per hour down this road. So I see safety risks in your proposal for parking. Having lived here, please consider a resident's perspective when you guys are going back to the drawing board and looking at this. You want to keep your children safe. This is going to be the best way to do it, is increase your parking or at least move the hut back further so you can create a roundabout within your area to keep everyone safe. So just wanted to pass that along again. If you guys do plan on, you say you're only going to use it.
Chair, that was the 3-minute timer that I hopefully heard. So I just wanted to alert you to that. And I just tried to unmute Randy again, but
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
I greatly appreciate your time and I appreciate you guys taking this into consideration. Again, if you want to hear anything from our HOA and applicants, if you want to touch base with us, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are a community in this area. We want to make sure things work for everyone. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Randy. Before you log off, are there any questions for the speaker? Commissioner Sturm, I see your hand up.
I just wanted to make sure that I understood where her community was. Can you say the address again?
Oh,
We
I
can-
think she dropped off.
but we can bring it up on a map. It's essentially across the street.
It's a
It's a little further down Camino Diablo, right above the driveway to the Lafayette Tennis Club.
Yeah, I was the same question. That would be Camino Court
I think you're
versus
right.
versus Loveland Drive across the street.
Correct.
Mhm.
Okay.
I was my question to her, and I'll just put it on the record. What I wanted to know when were she mentioned a few different events that had issues, and I was trying to envision when those were, like the swim meets, tennis, to just see if there was a high concentration at one time. But she's not available, so I guess.
She's coming back in.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Randy, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I was muted, so I was off. To answer your question, yes, we are just probably a 30-second walk from across the street from the hut. So there's Loveland Lane. That actually is our, a little bit of our backyard. So we're the townhomes just right across from it. The other question is
Wait, sorry, excuse me,
Sure.
Randy, can you just, Mr. Wolf is pulling up, which roofs? Is it the red roofs, the gray? Just, can you see the screen?
Yes, I can, absolutely. So where your hand is right there, oh, you just move your arrow up to right. Yes, this is our community right here. This is Camino Diablo Villas, yes.
Okay, thank you. And then Vice Chair LeBlanc, you had a second question?
I was curious if those different things that created a lot of traffic, if those were certain times that you were aware of. But so I don't know if that's something I don't mean exact times, but like, what's frequent.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the tennis club definitely fills up in the evenings on the weekdays. The swimming is the weekends, which the entire area is just full, even all the way up to the hut. You'll see cars backing up from swimming. And then Acalane's events are, you have basketball and swimming and football. All of those occur throughout the week. Those will back up all the way into our community as well. And people will, for those events, park in front of our townhomes. So it is throughout the entire week that you're seeing a lot of backup occur.
I just have one more question, and I really appreciated the feedback because you have very local feedback. And the thing that caught my ear as a parent and one of those people who yells at cars that goes too fast was the idea that people go fast. So in my mind, if scouts and other people were parking on the east facing side of Camino Diablo, that they'd have to cross over. If they're facing west, they would just walk behind their car. So I'm just going to ask you this question. Do you think speed bumps somewhere on there would be a good idea in general, and then secondly in connection with this, because it sounds like there's already issues going on, and I know maybe staff will get mad at that because I know there are fire engine requirements and some of that, but I'm just curious what you would think about speed bumps to kind of make it not somewhere people would want to speed through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, someone from our community tried to get that started to try to slow the traffic down a bit. in that area. I do think it would help. The speed bumps would help, but you do also get a lot of big trucks driving through from Public Works and the garbage trucks and all of that. So I'm not certain how that's going to impact their routes and their particular, what they're trying to accomplish on there.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Great question.
And Commissioner Stern has a question.
I just wanted to clarify. It sounded like what you were saying was when there is traffic to the tennis club, the swim school, and then big events at Acalanes, that there's like backup of in the travel lanes, but then there's also the street parking is utilized all along Camino Diablo.
Yes, ma'am. It is. It backs all the way up to our townhomes. It's unbelievable, and it'll back
parking on both sides.
They will park on both sides, yes. But then what happens is you see a lot of cyclists who use this path to get to Walnut Creek for their work are weaving in and out of traffic, or trying to avoid open doors, or trying to avoid people, pulling in and pulling out. So there's a lot of dangers around it that I don't think a lot of people see unless you live here and look out the window like I do, because I work from home every day and I see this. There's several times where you hear people screaming, honking, laying on their horns because a child from Acalanes is crossing the street and people are going too fast.
Thank you.
Of course, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Greg, are there other public speakers?
If you would like to speak, please raise your hand now. There are no callers and no raised hands.
Commissioners, may I just add that you guys are more than welcome to reach out to the Camino Diablo Villas if you want to have any one-on-one questions.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Okay, with that, there's no other hands raised for public comment. We will close the public comment portion of the meeting, and we'll bring it back to the applicants team. So you have 5 minutes to provide us with any additional information if you'd like to address any comments that you've received tonight. Welcome.
Well, let's see, from the Camino Diablo Villas folks. Yeah, I've been hanging out at our proposed site many times, and I guess I'm not there at the right times to see the demand that sometimes occurs for parking from local events. I haven't seen it yet, but I don't doubt that there are instances where there is a high demand for parking in that part of Lafayette. I guess one response I have is our demand for parking is quite limited. We have one meeting a month for a couple hours. And the other meetings are kind of infrequent throughout the year, and then short-term get-togethers on the weekends on the way out the door for a trip. So it's not like we're there every weekend or every weeknight. It's quite rare that we're there at all. So I guess that. But I would like to go out there sometime when there's a football game at Acalanes or some tournament at the tennis club and see what's going on with the parking.
Yeah, I'll just add that. So I live in Saranap, and I have 3 children at Acalanes, all in different sports. I don't think there's a road in Lafayette I spend more time on than Camino Diablo. Several times a day, morning, afternoon, evening. Though I certainly appreciate the HOA's concerns, I'm not quite sure I see the same picture she painted. I don't see the usage. In front of her unit, there's a red bay alarm car that always seems to be parked out there. But I've seen some overflow parking from the Lafayette, And I did go to the home opener of the Acalanes football team. The stadium was sold out. And as I drove back up Camino Diablo, there were no cars. We all parked down in the church parking lot there at the bottom of the hill. As for swim meets, yeah, Springbrook really packs them in, but those are concentrated to 8 events between June and July when we're off at camp and doing high adventure things. So I'm not sure that really is apples to apples in terms of usage of that road. We really follow the school calendar, and then in summer we go on adventures and to camp. So we don't even meet at the hut every month of the year. So I appreciate her comments, but I don't live there. I'm not staring out a window and working there all day, but I sure spent a lot of time on that road, and I've just seen a slightly different picture that was painted for the board here.
Okay. Thank you, applicant team. Greg?
If it pleases the commission to Commissioner Sturm's question of whether there is parking on both sides, Google Street View, looking through the history of Street View, I'm happy to share. And the most parking I could find was in this capture from April of 2019. All the others had, just a very few cars. So this is Camino Justin, I believe, on the right. And so there's a fog line on the north side of the street and none on the south side of the street. This pole is somewhat indicative of where the subject property starts. And then the parking, essentially on-street parking, or the ability to park, I think kind of diminishes on the north at this at the east side of the property. And then you may be able to, once you pass, so this is red through next to the corporation yard for the city, but there may be additional on-street parking to the east served by that sidewalk. So this is the vicinity of the subject property. So once a curb cut is placed to enter and exit from the property, there would be a sight distance triangle applied, essentially. So there would be no parking or red zone either side of that to provide sight distance. I think the transportation engineer, or rather transportation program manager, recommended a drop-off zone, and there was discussion tonight about this initial space. So there is on-street parking on both sides, and certainly it looks feasible on the strip on the north side, where one could use the sidewalk to access the property and need not cross the street during nighttime hours unless it is a sizable event, which could be addressed through the capacity cap.
Thank you. So we can bring it to the commissions for further comment. I know initially we had asked clarifying questions. We've heard a presentation by the applicant's team. So now I'd like to just kind of further discuss any comments that we would like to provide for Planning Commission to provide in a motion. And we can start with the Design Review Commission for any comments, and then we'll bring it to the Planning Commission for any comments. So please, Chair Gray, feel free to provide comment.
Thank you. So I do have a number of comments I'll try to go through quickly. First, while I would prefer to see more on-site parking, my feeling is, in terms of land use in front of the building, an on-site turnaround would probably be a priority in my view, because what I'm very concerned about is U-turns on that street, especially at night. If people are coming from either direction and then dropping off their kids and going home, there's a U-turn there. I stopped and looked at the site and I had to do a U-turn. It was in broad daylight and there were cars coming at a pretty good rate of speed. I would hate to be doing that at night. Regarding the building itself and the design and the character, I think the idea of a kind of a modern looking barn is a nice solution. And I like seeing that. And I think that is a sort of a nice kind of a transition form between an institutional community use and the adjacent residential use. I thought the design of the building itself was fairly nice looking. I would say if it's a red color, it should be a subdued kind of dusty brick red rather than a real full-on barn red. There will be quite a bit of visibility of this building from down the hill on the other side, or there could be. And most of the year it's against the brown grass, and sometimes it's against green grass. We will see. We'll need to see revised site circulation. My preference is to keep the parking in front and use planting to help screen direct view of parked cars, but allow the 50-foot setback to remain. Regarding finishes, the metal panels that are proposed as the finished materials on the hut building, I would ask that they finish as flat rather than having any gloss or sheen at all. It should be non-reflective. There's a large area of south-facing glazing shown in the current design, and that could be a cause for significant heat gain in the interior. The applicant might consider either reducing the glass, providing a deeper roof overhang above that, but what I would not like to see is a reflective solar coating, anything that would cause reflected glare and draw attention to the building. Let's see. If parking is going to be provided off-site on the street, I wonder if a lit flashing crosswalk sign would be appropriate if it's going to be done at night, or if the volume doesn't justify that, if there might be a crossing guard when necessary. That's everything on my list. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Commissioner Pass.
Yeah, I concur with John on a number of items, although part of the parking in front is preferable. To meet the fire department's requirements, I don't think that's an option anymore. I think it's going to be in the back. Otherwise, they have to eliminate the single-family dwelling unit. As far as the size of the single-family dwelling unit, I don't have a problem with it becoming a 2-bedroom. I think it has to stay under, Greg would know, is it 1,100 or 1,200 square foot to be exempt from some of the requirements? Well, in any event, it has limitations on what the size is. I didn't see whether there was path lighting for the amphitheater. I would like to not see a lot of path lighting, so the amphitheater would only be used in daytime hours. As far as the color, I agree with the sort of a more rusty or brick color rather than a sharp red as the color. And regarding a possible access for a drive into the property or a curve or something, I think would be advantageous to do that, particularly if the parking is in the back, rather than just rely on the curb cut. Because I was trying to ascertain how many people are going to be coming from the east and how many from the west. Sarah Knapp might be coming from the east towards the property, but if you're in the Akalani's area, a lot of that's going to come from the west. That means that they're going to drop off their kids on the wrong side of the street and make them run across the street in a hurry. That's going to be dangerous. So it's better to have them actually do their U-turn or pull into the driveway and then pull out. That's my preference.
Okay, thank you. Planning Commission, Commissioner Sturm.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add that my kids are not currently in Scouts, but my oldest son has asked me to enroll him, and it may be in this troop. I actually don't know which one it is, but I'll just put that out there just in case. But I, of course, can review this impartially, and I'm not involved in this group currently. I too like the massing and design. I think I'd be fine with, I appreciated Commissioner Heising's comments about wanting to keep with earth tones and just being, mindful of what's there now and how it blends in. But I do think that if, I like the sort of modern barn look, and if the red is a subdued, earthier red, I think that would actually look pretty nice. And then also like, Chair Gray's comments about the reflectivity sounded really good. I like those. And then the dwelling unit, I'd be fine with it being a size that works for them, as long as it's not creating a bigger grading issue. I think my main concerns now, and I don't have the answers. I think that's going to be staff and the applicant looking at a little bit more. Is about the safety and the parking and the ingress and egress. One, I prefer the parking in the front, because I do think we're going to end up with more grading and more retaining walls if you try to push it in the back, even if you push the building forward. And as an outdoor space, the amphitheater is perfect for a slope, because it can slope with the terrain, and you're not having to have a tall retaining wall. One idea I wanted to put out there, just in case the applicant hadn't looked at it yet, is you could do something like have a paved travel lane that's a patio and a travel lane. So maybe there, I don't know if you have the width, but maybe there's a way to have a driving lane just go around the building. You'd have to see if that would feel safe with your operations. But if it's sort of like a patio with bollards, and it's just a matter of 10 cars coming through to drop kids off, and there's not that, maybe the kids are starting out inside the building or something and then moving out to the amphitheater, maybe that would work. And then I don't know how this would, staff would, you have to talk to staff about parking requirements. I don't think we'd want to go down from 8, because 8 feels pretty slim. But if you were to do that, like travel lane, maybe there's a way to put some tandem spots in there. Like if you have a couple adult leaders that are coming to every meeting and they're not leaving until the end, maybe there's a way to work that out and just get some more on-site spaces. Because I am concerned. I feel like the numbers that you're trying to plan around feel pretty optimistic, and there's, like you said, there's definitely going to be times when more people are staying, and that road just, I mean, I think we've brought up several safety issues with kids crossing the street and with street parking, bicycling being more hairy, and then the dark conditions at night. And so I think all of that needs some more thought. But in terms of like this utilizing this site, I think it's a good fit. And I think that's all I had. Yeah, and if it sounds like the street parking, the way that it's utilized now is overflow, and it's not something that's necessarily like planned for. And I feel like with the use that your facility is planning for, the street parking would be part of the program. So if that were the case and we knew it was going to be utilized with regularity, I think whatever improvements happen along that street front, that we would try to address bicycle safety, maybe make a bike lane or something like that. So those are all my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Heising?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I think this is a real appropriate location for this use. Fully supportive of the HUD at this location. Comments that I made earlier about the color red, I agree with earlier comments just made that if it's more of a brick red or a subdued red, and it's not sticking out so boldly, that would be fine with me. I also agree with the comment that I think the fire department requirements are going to kind of dictate where that parking is. While I prefer it to be in the front, I understand if it's in the back and can get behind that. I also agree that bumping up the size of the ADU to house 2 bedrooms, I don't have an issue with that. Let them make as much revenue as they can to support the operations of the facility. In my mind is good. And then regarding parking, I think I don't think there's a parking issue at all. I think the 8 spots are sufficient. I think between the scouts that are going to ride their bike and maybe a couple adult leaders, it doesn't even sound like the 8 spots are going to get filled. And I would agree with Mr. Lyman that, demand, I think he made a statement that demand on parking is going to be very limited. And I fully agree with that. And even if the 3 times a year that there's an award ceremony and there's perhaps 20 cars, 8 of those cars are going to be able to park on site, and the other 12 can easily fit in that curb parking beyond the fog line on that side of the street. I don't think there's really going to be an issue with scouts running across the street, because I think that side of the street can accommodate this facility. So I think we're perhaps, my opinion, that we're perhaps making a parking issue when there isn't one. So those are my comments. Fully supportive of the project, and happy to have it come back in the future for our final action.
Thank you. Vice Chair Lavange, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I'm supportive of the use. I was trying to look at Google Maps and the parcel map and thinking, would it be nice if whoever owns the parcel just to the east could do a little land swap to make the throat a little wider, so that some of these things could be done in a flatter area. I would ask that the applicant just at least try, but I being in real estate, I realize that that's easier said than done. So assuming that couldn't be done, I would, to my earlier comment, the upper limit on people as part of the conditional use, I'd like the applicant to provide a number, especially if they were to rent it out, as a control, so that there wouldn't be a huge demand. I was very happy to see that the street parking was really only on the, I guess, the north side for the most part. So that does, well, is that true, or is it, what is that white line called? You guys haven't heard that line, ghost line?
I've heard it referred to as the fog line.
Fog, F-O-G?
Correct.
Okay, so maybe I just said something, and looking at this picture, I realized I might be wrong. So I'm looking at the site, looking north in Google Street View, and I see the fog line on the right side, but the left side, there isn't one, but there is parking. So what is, that's just so you can see in fog? Is that why it's called the fog line? So dense fog, you can see where it is?
My understanding is it's called the fog line so that it demarcates essentially the right side of the travel lane, so that you are given a visual indicator of the center line and the right side of the travel lane. We can get an assessment from the transportation program manager on the ability to park on both the north side and the south side of Camino.
Okay.
in this area.
Yeah, just looking at the map, I did notice people are parked on the south side farther up, but so otherwise I'm pretty, and I think you did this as well, Greg, but I went through this Google Street View over the years and I never really saw a situation that looked, and this is a very small sample size, but it always looked relatively clear. So I think with the use of the Boy Scouts here, I don't think that's going to be a conflict that is going to dramatically change what's going on here. So that's where I am, and I'd be supportive when it comes back. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I do have a couple additional comments. I am in support of the project. I do understand where the building is being proposed and why it's being proposed there. I personally do prefer the parking in the front. And I kind of feel it's up to the applicant to figure out if they want the dwelling unit in the back, how to position it in order to have fire access. If they want the parking in the front, they might have to adjust the dwelling unit. And if they want the dwelling unit, they might have to provide parking in the back. I would like to see an ADA spot, one of the 8, but I also agree with Commissioner Heising that from my review of Google Earth and from going out there and having children at Acalanes, I do feel there's sufficient parking, and I worry that we are creating, or could be, perceived that we're creating a parking issue that might not exist. I do agree, though, that drop off on the project side of the street is preferred and is ideal because of safety and because of kids and the speed that people travel on that road. And I also agree with the comment someone made about having to make a U-turn in the middle of the road can get hairy. So I don't know if there is a way to do a turnaround on site. I know Commissioner Sturm, I did like your idea of maybe there's a way to drive around, but I feel the applicant can hear these comments and try to come up with a solution. As for the red color, I do like the idea of a burnt type red or a brick red, as someone referred to it, because there's nothing to say that the condos across the street won't change their color 5 years from now. I don't think we should limit the use of red. I actually respectfully disagree with one of the comments about minimizing the path lights to the outdoor activity area. And I'm looking at my screen here on figure A1. It seems to be proposed pretty close to the actual scout hut. And based off of the applicant, I feel they said January was one of the ceremony times, where people would be coming, which is pretty dark at that time, and it's dark early by 5 o'clock. So I actually think lighting would be good to have. And then, let me see. I think that's, if there was a way of working with the transportation department, maybe just extra, I don't know how it works, Greg, but if there's a way to do extra signage or children crossing or, beware type signs, but otherwise I'm in support of the project. So Nancy, I know, or correct me if I'm wrong, I think what you're looking for is a motion by Planning Commission. Let me pull up the agenda here so get the wording correct. So we reviewed the project, conduct a public hearing, provide comments and feedback to the applicant. So we would be providing a motion tonight to continue the item and bring it back, all while taking into consideration the comments heard tonight. Is that correct? Okay. If a planning commissioner would like to make that motion, please, or something else, Greg.
I'll ask Nancy to weigh in, and if they want to raise their hands, the applicants are welcome to as well. But on the continuance date, it's preferable to choose a date certain and thus save some costs on the applicant's parts for renoticing and staff time as well. So I would suggest no earlier than 4 weeks out, which would be October 17. We could also, at that point, if additional time is needed, push it out. So
That's my recommendation.
Okay, thank you. So part of the motion would be a continuance to a specific date of October 17th. Okay.
So moved. Unless someone else has something else.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote. Commissioner Heising,
Sorry, couldn't get off mute. Aye.
thank you. Commissioner Sturm,
Aye.
Vice Chair Labange,
Aye.
and Chair Radnich, aye. So item, I guess, passes for coming back on October 17th. Thank you, Nancy. I would like staff's input here. I imagine item 7B might take a little bit of time. Typically we would break at 9 o'clock, so 2 hours in. Maybe we go ahead and take our 5-minute break now, and that way we're just kind of consistent with our thoughts for the next item. Is everyone open to that? Vice Chair Labange?
Is there any consideration, given that the DRC doesn't have quorum for this meeting, because we only get so many meetings, is it effectively already spent tonight regardless? And if not, does it make sense to maybe not have this meeting tonight
For item 7B.
for 7B?
If I may, Commissioner Seidel said that she had another Zoom meeting, but she said she would be available if necessary. So I can contact her to see if she's available to join in the 5-minute recess that we have.
And if she isn't, maybe we answer the question. If she isn't, does it make sense to postpone 7B till we have quorum for the DRC?
It's certainly an option if you would like that additional. It's not obligatory to that the DRC must have a quorum in order to participate. Certainly, if they were taking a formal action of recommending and having a vote, they would need to have a quorum. However, the commissioners present can offer their comments. Hopefully Commissioner Seidel can. So if the item is discussed tonight in earnest, and there appear to be a fair number of people on the call for this item upcoming, if it's discussed tonight if it's discussed tonight, it does become one of the meetings that will add into the 5. And so you do have the capacity to continue it without discussion if you do want to have a quorum or majority of the DRC present.
Okay. Thank you, Vice Chair Labange, for bringing that up. So why don't we then, it's 8:32 on my clock, why don't we take a break until 8:40, which will give staff time to reach out to the other member of the Design Review Commission. And then we can come back now in 7 minutes at 8:40, if that works. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. Just wait for 2 more planning commissioners. 1 more. Okay. Welcome back. It is 8:41 and we will continue tonight's meeting. Moving on to item 7B, DR0. Oh, actually, sorry, before we move on, there was a request right before the break for staff to follow up to see if any other members of the Design Review Commission are available to join tonight's meeting. Staff, do you have an update? Did I lose?
I'm inviting Nancy, who I believe reached out to Commissioner Seidel. Nancy, if you are trying, we are not seeing you nor hearing you.
Sorry, my computer froze for a little bit. I tried contacting her and she did not respond via text message or pick up her phone, unfortunately.
Okay. I mean, I guess I will entertain a brief, very brief discussion on this. I feel comfortable moving forward with tonight's item. I will look to Design Review Commission. If you feel comfortable moving forward with tonight's item.
In my opinion, I don't think the number of design review commissioners present would have a substantial difference on our discussion. So I don't see that as a reason not to move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Given that we're not voting.
Oh, okay, thank you. Commissioner Sturm, I did see your hand go up.
I was just gonna ask staff what they foresee the plan for the 5 meetings being. Like who's gonna see, I did see like the next meeting, but could you just briefly state that?
So the first meeting would be Planning Commission with DRC. The following meeting, Planning Commission with Transcirc. And if necessary, a 3rd meeting with Planning Commission. And then after that, City Council.
So in theory, the Design Review Commission could be invited back for that 3rd meeting.
Okay. And Vice Chair Lavange, you were the one that brought this up, and then I saw you give a thumbs up sign. Are you comfortable moving forward?
Yes, I didn't realize they didn't have to vote, so their input, I think, with who we have will be great.
Okay, great. Well then, item 7B, DR06-22, GP01-22, TP04-22, SAJ development in the SRB zoning. Request for design review, grading permit, category 2 tree permit to redevelop 4 parcels containing 3 existing commercial retail buildings. And staff is here for a staff presentation. So tonight, again, just kind of recap, we will be reviewing the application, providing feedback both from DRC and Planning Commission. We will be directing the applicant to respond to comments, and we'll the recommendation then would be to continue the matter for review by Planning Commission and Transcirc at a joint hearing on October 3rd. So Nancy, I'll turn it over to staff. Thank you.
The items before you are design review 06-22, grading permit 0122, and tree permit 0422 submitted by the applicant SJA Development for the properties at 1001, 1007, and 1009 Oak Hill Road. The property is within the SRB Special Retail Business Zoning District and also the Downtown Retail District as defined in the Downtown Specific Plan. The project proposes to redevelop 4 parcels containing 3 existing commercial buildings and demolishing all of them except for the one on the north side, and to construct a 5-story residential building with 51 rental units, which includes 6 below market rate units, along with subterranean parking, which is 74 in the garage, and to maintain 11 surface parking spaces along Oak Hill Road. The maximum height of the building will be 58 feet. The project will require design review and demolition permits since it is located within the downtown, a grading permit and tree permits for removal of trees, since it's also anything in the commercial districts is considered protected. And eventually they will need a lot line revision, but they are deferred that until after they receive their entitlement. This is a state density bonus project, so they are requesting waivers for height, parking, building design, setback, and they are requesting a public art concession to reduce that 1% required per zoning code, and they are providing $75,000. This is a snapshot of the project, and this is a ground floor plan of the building, the existing building to the north that they're going to maintain, and this is technically 2 levels of parking due to the topography going from Oak Hill towards the west. And these are sections of the building. You can see it's 5 stories. This top story, this is Oak Hill Road. This top story is set back, and the garage level is technically 2 levels going up with the topography.
Excuse me, Nancy. I
Yes.
apologize, but it's really blurry on my side. Is that a me user problem that maybe I need to zoom in or out, or is anyone else having that? I just worry that the public also is unable to read the slides.
Is that better?
I mean, not for me, but maybe if I'm just the only one having the problem and I need
Text either. I mean, I can make out the form, but I can't read it like you would be, it looks
No,
blurry.
the small lettering is not readable. The titles on the sheet, where like East Courtyard is readable on my screen.
I
Okay.
can zoom in if you like, but they are part of the project plan set.
Okay,
as well.
then that's fine. I just want members of the public to be able to follow along. Okay, thank you.
And then I'll turn it over to Samina Limkadawala. She'll be taking on the rest of this presentation.
She's coming in now. I thought she was already a panelist, but she's coming in now and will be able to unmute and continue the presentation.
Thank you, Nancy. Good evening, commissioners and members of the public. Staff has received comments from 5 referral agencies. We received several comments from Contra Costa County Fire Protection District, in response to which the applicant has been working with the fire department chief and are preparing an alternative means and methods plan. Comments received from East Bay Municipal District are to protect their right-of-way and Lafayette aqueducts. Comments from cities landscape consultant Inside Out are included as part of staff's recommendation. Staff has received no public comments at the time of the staff report publication. Today, we received public comments from Robert Lavoie and Libby Henry. Mr. Lavoie detailed concerns about the height and recommends additional step down. Ms. Henry opposed the project due to its size and stated that the project is inconsistent with the Lafayette's mission statement of vision. Next slide, please, Nancy. With that, we have staff design recommendations. Staff recommends incorporating a direct connection for pedestrian to and from Terraces Way, similar to the access and circulation proposed for vehicles. This would also help promote linkage improve linkage and access to commercial and retail users on Mount Diablo Boulevard. Next slide, please. The second recommendation is to revisit the building design and provide identifiable entries to the residential building from the south and east side. Consider an alternative color and material, such as horizontal siding with wood or wood-looking material to complement the existing color and material on the street. Mitigate bulk and apparent face by providing varied building height or building offsets to address the castle-like appearance. Then locate and screen utility equipments from the public view. Update the tree mitigation calculation that includes all 24 downtown protected trees on site, which has been identified in the letter from city's landscape consultant. Then expand the planting strip to provide room for shrubs to grow along Oak Hill Road and Terrace Way, or consider specifying only vines at locations with space limitations. Include an island or planter to provide additional shade at the surface parking areas in the north, eastern, and western side. Introduce artistically styled trash and recycling receptacles. Provide sitting and table amenities at the terrace landscape areas located in a courtyard setting facing the east side. And provide dedicated passenger pickup and drop-off location points and on-site loading. With that, staff recommends that the commissions provide feedback to the applicant and continue the matter for review by the Planning Commission and Transportation and Circulation Commission joint hearing meeting scheduled on October 3rd. I conclude my presentation and staff is available if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Samina, I don't think I've met you, so welcome. I don't know if other planning commissioners have. Are there any clarifying questions for staff? I will ask that we save any opinions or specific comments to after we've heard public comment, but are there any clarifying questions? I'll first look to Design Review Commission. Chair Gray?
Yeah, thanks. We've been in discussion with staff, or I've been in discussion with staff a little bit regarding the comments by the county fire district. And my question for staff, if you've been in discussion with the applicant regarding their proposed method for dealing with some of these requested design changes that could end up being significant. And in particular, the fire truck and fire apparatus requirements suggested in the letter could really significantly alter what the design is, and whether, number one, you have any input from the applicant that what they're doing does seem to address it. And then also if we could ask the applicant to focus on that first, so we make sure that we're not reviewing a project that ultimately will be quite different from what they're showing us this evening.
We did follow up with the applicant on the fire department's comments to see if it would change the design significantly. And he did, after the fire comments were issued, he did speak with Chief Bachman, and then the comments have been modified a little bit, and that's why they are working with the fire department on an alternative access. I can't say how much has changed. I would leave that up for the applicant to provide information.
Okay, thanks. That's my only question.
Okay, Commissioner Cass, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Nancy, have you looked at the noise element? Where does this project fall in the contours for Highway 24?
Don't know at the top of my head, but I can double check and get back to you on that.
Okay. While staff's looking at that, are there any clarifying questions for staff from the Planning Commission? No? Okay. Commissioner Cass, if you're comfortable, I'm guessing, but if we can move to the applicant's presentation, and then hopefully by that time, Nancy will have a response. Does that work for you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, perfect. Okay, then we'd like to please welcome the applicant's team for a 10-minute presentation. And staff, might I ask, I'm looking at my clock just on my computer, but if someone can keep the timer, okay, great, thank you.
Happy to do that.
Can someone also
Uh,
add Amra Morrison, please?
Can do.
Thank you. And then Andrew Jacobson might be in there as well. Thank you. And I can get going, just I know it's late already. So first of all, thank you all for taking this meeting. Obviously, we appreciate being heard. We've spent significant time working on this project, and we appreciate you taking the time to hear us. My name is Jeff Stone. I'm second generation at Diamond Construction. You've all seen me on multiple projects, both single family and multifamily. I'm currently developing Lucas Ranch, 3742 Mount Diablo, and 950 Huff. This project is one that I've been working on for about 3.5 years. I've always seen, and being an infill developer, that this particular site and the sites around it and its proximity to BART are ripe for an opportunity to look at redevelopment, both for mixed use as well as residential design. The ethos of this project is really understanding that the needs of residential development within Lafayette for people within my age range that went to Alkalanis, that are starting families or are about to start families, also need to have an opportunity to live in Lafayette. And we should be looking at these projects in a way where we're not forcing our hillsides and the flora and fauna to take the brunt of the development activity, but we should be looking at the way that we're going to create smart community, one which we can walk to downtowns, one which we can walk to BART, and one which we provide people with a very healthy and happy lifestyle. I will answer the fire real quick. I have been in many conversations with Chief Bachman. The 4 areas to state that we will not be redesigning this entire project is what he would like to see on the redesign in the AMMRs is first, an exterior stairway added to the roof from the 4th to 5th roof. I will show that later with Randy. The second, on the northern stairway, he would like to see that enclosed with a standpipe all the way to the top, so that in case of a fire on that side, they can fight the fire, get to the roof, and go out with a standpipe on that side. A standpipe on the other exterior stairway will be added as well. The third is they would like us to straighten the exterior stairways where we're above the podium, and they would want to make sure that they have a 28-foot ladder that they don't have to bend around, so that they can make sure that they make a straight shot to the top of the podium. And the final issue that could or could not be necessary is making the bottom portion of this project a type 3 building rather than a type 5 building. I'm working with Chief Bachman on a few other projects. We Zoomed for about an hour on this project. He reached out to me again today, showing support and the way that we are trying to handle and work through AMMs in the situation where they don't have a ladder truck other than Walnut Creek. Instead of going deeper and deeper, we have 10 minutes. I'll open it up to Randy, and I'm happy to answer any other questions. Last, we really appreciate the work that staff has put into this. We had multiple pre-meetings with multiple staff members. We've worked through multiple plans. We've looked at acoustics. We've looked at transportation. We've looked at density. We've looked at the way that the community will have walkways. We're trying to balance out office with residential development, because we all know living here that we're losing a lot of our office development, so that we do have work live still available to us. We thought through this project in many ways to try to benefit the way that development is gonna start coming into our communities in a way that we can all be proud. Randy?
Yeah, hi, I didn't hear that my camera's working, so I apologize for that. But the way this site is developed, it's the existing, what used to be Blockbuster building on the north is blocking a lot of our acoustics that, the noise problem comes to the freeway. And if you notice on our north elevation of our building, that small portion up to the west of the Blockbuster building has no windows, so there's no acoustic issues there. We stepped this thing up to accommodate the terrain and as much as we can. As far as our color palette materials, we like to think we've got a little more sophisticated building here, where the colors don't jump out at you, but they're subtle, but they're rich. We'll redo the entry element and make that a little bit more of a focal point. And in that point, I think we'll change the material and use a horizontal siding like you've recommended. But I would resist just dropping panels of horizontal siding on this building just to get another material on there. I don't think we need another material. I think in this case, less is more. We've got a nice brick that accentuates a different articulation, and that helps in the vertical as well as the horizontal articulation. We've got glass panels on on the decks and up on the roof deck. The couple things you've asked for, the trash enclosures is inside the garage, so they're not exposed anywhere, as well as utilities. We have one in front of unit 103. We have a transformer, but it's completely back behind the building and it's landscaped. One of your questions was the incorporated direct access from the parking lot to our south into our building. That doesn't really, there isn't really a good way to do that. We don't want to route the general public through our building. I truly doubt that people are going to be walking across that parking lot to get to our building, especially when the access along Untitled Boulevard would be 20, 30 feet away, and it's a pretty pleasant walk. You've asked for access from direct access to the parking lot from Untitled Boulevard to our parking lot. We've already accommodated that. If you've asked for a drop-off space in front of our building, we can do that, but again, it would cost us a parking space to do that.
One thing while he's decided, we've been asked to provide terrace way. We don't have the legal right to provide that. That is an easement from the other property owner. So I encourage staff or whoever to look at the preliminary title report and the color-coded easement map, but we don't have the legal right to create some pedestrian and or vehicular cut through up into where the apartments are up and above it.
So in addition to, the sidewalk along Oak Hill Road is probably 10 feet wide, and then we're set back 10 feet from the property line, and that whole front of that area is landscaped with our C3 planters showing up on sheet 2.1. I'm not sure where you talk about adding a vine pocket or something. I'm not sure where you're addressing that. We are on the south side of our garage where the green area is. We do have a 2-foot setback there, and that is a vine pocket. And we're going to put the cables on the wall and make a living wall out of the side of that garage that does show. Other than that, it's we spent a lot of time on the site trying to maximize the views. Dealt with the acoustics very well, we think. We've got I believe there's a comment about more furniture, yard furniture on the patio on the top of the podium here, which shows in green. We intend to do that. tables and chairs and other passive things to put up there, but we haven't developed our landscape plan far enough to, that'll all show up on our landscape plan when we get there.
And 3 other things I want to point out before Amra takes the remaining time. We've provided for a healthy lobby. It's a lot of residential rental buildings haven't been built in Lafayette for a long time, and we're trying to set a precedence for lifestyle. This is amenity space. On top of this podium is a landscaped area that's also open. Importantly, from the setback from Oak Hill to this back building, you have over 100 feet. So the siding and massing, when the experience from Oak Hill coming off, you have an existing building that goes up with the pitched roofs, and then you have this side of the building that's step, but we have this amenity space that breaks up to a 3rd level of a podium with more outdoor living space. We have another upper landscaped area to try to break up some of this siding and massing. And then finally, we put up a landscaped roof deck. So we're trying to contain and actually create a lifestyle within this building. And we've been very thoughtful and meticulous about how much area we're trying to develop there so that the community members can enjoy it. Amra?
Excuse me, applicant team, I don't want to cut in, but Greg, do you know how much time is left, or was that the timer?
That was 10 minutes.
Okay, so your team does, I apologize, you guys do get 10 minutes, you're at the 10-minute mark. If there's, 20 seconds of something you'd like to say, please do. Otherwise, you'll have to wait for your additional 5 minutes.
Sure, I'll just be very, very quick. Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Amra Morrison, and I'm with the law firm of Wendell, Fenimore Wendell, and we represent SAG Development. I just am here to kind of remind the commissioners about the fact that this has been submitted pursuant to SB 330 and the Housing Accountability Act. And so it's very, very important to focus on objective zoning standards. And we think that the staff report was very good, explained the project very well, but did note that there were the staff report did make mention of some subjective standards by using words like more inviting and minimize looming. So we would just request that the commission in their comments stay focused on objective standards. And thank you very much for allowing me my 20 seconds.
Thank you. At this point, I would like to ask if there's any questions for the speakers from DRC and then Planning Commission. Please.
May I ask the applicant to show us on the site plan the fire truck access and how that would meet the comments by the county?
Yes, sir. Obviously, this isn't a formal application. We haven't formally submitted for our AMMs or ours. Typically, you get an entitlement and then you work through this process. However, for this, you would come in. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So he would come in here. He would have ladder access to the top of this landscaped area. He would ask for an outdoor or exterior stairway to the top of this roof into this area. There would also be a standpipe here that would come through this stairway too. So standpipe access right here. The second request is on the other northern side of the building. You have this stairway. He would like us to enclose that stairway. I don't know if you can, I'll try to zoom in, sorry. This stairway here in the northern part of the building, he would like us to enclose that stairway up onto this roof. We think it's very reasonable, and from a planning side, the freeway and the East Bay Mud Aqueduct is the only area over there. It wouldn't affect anyone's offsite impacts. That would also have a standpipe that would come up through this area. The third issue is because we have created this landscaped area on this podium, he addressed this curve into this coming up to the top of this podium, where he's worried that a 28-foot ladder wouldn't be able to make this curve and then this curve. So he wants us to straighten this area out. The fourth and final issue is in this part of the building. We believe this part here will be a type 3 construction with a 2-hour configuration at the exterior walls.
So are you able to achieve the 150-foot distance that they asked for in their first point?
The point of alternative means and methods is that if you cannot comply strictly with something in the code, you're providing something else that's an alternative that they feel is satisfactory for life, safety, and healthy.
Okay, thank you.
So
my only
to
question.
answer the question directly, yes, they so far, I do not have anything stamped. I have not formally submitted. I have not worked with other members that when you go through DDs and CDs, you're going to work through the details of this. But I would believe I can represent the Chief Bachman and I and the architect were able to come to different ideas and solutions that he felt satisfied the request, since their ladder truck is not in Walnut Creek. He also notated that they are vehemently looking for a spot in Lafayette so that they can get a ladder truck closer to this area, so that this issue, as they see more type 5 and type 3 buildings in Lafayette, isn't going to be as significant of an issue as you saw in that letter.
Okay, thanks much.
You're welcome.
All right.
Commissioner Klaus?
Yes, can the architect walk us through the acoustics? Because I don't see a cross section that really shows me what the elevation of, say, the 5th floor roof and Highway 24 is.
Respectfully, we'll hire Salter. Salter has already been employed on this project. They're one of the premier acoustic firms in the area. We haven't worked through any of our cross sections or detailing for our STC ratings or any of our other acoustic ratings. There is a report that was done by LSA for the acoustics. We completed other reports for the 32 exemption qualification, and there's some detailing in there that you can get, but respectfully, we're at an entitlement set, and we haven't completely designed or figured out exactly what the STC rating from each one of those areas will be.
Okay, and do you understand that some of the roof decks may have to be enclosed with some type of barrier?
I'm not known of that, so that is news to me, and we'll look into that.
The answer is that may be the case, and we've done that before. We worked with Salter on our Trinity project in Walnut Creek, which was much closer to BART and the freeway than this project. And we did work and got the acoustic barriers up, and mainly they're plexiglass, and they're usually 4.5 feet tall or something like that, so that when you're
Well, they'll probably be higher than 4.5 feet.
Well, well, Salter will tell us that, but the idea is if you're sitting in a chair, your ears are below the top of the thing. But we've done that before. We've done projects next to the freeway, 2 of them in Walnut Creek just recently, and this one is, I think, less impacted by the freeway than those were. So there are issues and details that we have to work out, but they're not deal breakers or scary or anything. We've done it before.
Commissioner Cass, did you have any other questions
None.
for the applicant's team? Okay. Thank you, Planning Commission. Are there any clarifying questions from the applicant's team? Commissioner Heisen?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So my question is related to density bonus law, and I'm sure staff's already asked this question of the applicant, but I notice, well, can't help but notice that one of your waivers is the height waiver for 5 stories. And my question is, do you need 5 stories for financial viability of the project? And why not just 4 stories?
I'm going to answer the question. Yes, First, this is a very, very expensive project based off of the cross section and the grading and the drainage and what we have to create for the parking. The hardest challenge in this project is creating the structural engineering and soil engineering to get that cross cut so that we can get the stacked parking to get to the parking requirements, even though we would prefer a lesser side. So for financial viability on this project, looking at a net rental square footage standpoint to the gross square footage that we have to build based on those inefficiencies of the podium itself and not being able to utilize the podium as a structural engineering solution to build on top of, we need additional density for our underwriting to work.
Yeah, and let me just give a really quick little primer here on state density bonus law. So waivers of development standards are employed for development standards that would have the effect of physically precluding the construction of the project, including the bonus units. And so, as Jeff has described, you can't fit 56 or 51 units within 4 stories. So the imposition of the height limitation would have the effect of physically precluding the construction of the project, including the bonus units. Hopefully that answers your question, Commissioner.
Yeah, I guess, could you still fit 51 units, just smaller units in 4 stories? Or did you pencil that out? I mean, if the answer is you need 5 stories, I can accept that, but where I'm coming from is 4 stories would from a street curb appeal be more preferable in my mind. But if you need 5 to make it work, I understand. But did you run 4 and see if you could make it work?
I'll answer that in 2 questions. First, is that we tried to create the appearance of 4 stories by creating that step back so that exact question that you're asking from the appearance from Oak Hill is that it is a 4-story structure. The second is that we designed 12 or 13 different buildings on this site, trying to figure out how to make this site work with the parking and digging into the site and then working with the grade. So we exhausted, and I think staff will be able to also speak to multiple iterations of Zoom calls of showing different ways that we thought it could work. As we know, there's a rising interest rate market right now. Hard costs have not fallen with that higher interest rate. So it is a time that getting that 5th story is imperative to even try to get this thing out of the ground.
Understood. And that makes sense to me. I'm just asking because I would imagine the public's going to ask and you might get council members asking. So to hear that response up front is great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other clarifying questions from members of the Planning Commission? Christina, Commissioner Sturm.
Sort of a ask for elaboration, I guess. I appreciate the thoughtful presentation and talking through all the various myriad of issues that you're solving for with this size project and this location. Could you speak about a little more about the design and how this relates to Lafayette in particular, and then also the context of the freeway on the one side and our sort of stepping down downtown on the other side?
Yeah, I think first we're losing commercial development to residential projects all over in large chunks. So the first way I looked at the site is how can we actually keep some of our commercial operating so that state density bonus law doesn't swallow up everything. While looking at the site, one of the first things that we started to try to figure out is, okay, we're working with the grade, so there's a parking issue. You need to lay out the parking, but we also have an acoustics issue because you have Highway 24, as Commissioner Cass has pointed out multiple times, and it was a huge part of how we were thinking about the design of this project to make it a habitable area next to Highway 24 off of a very busy freeway exit ramp. So the considerations of looking at the blocking and to try to identify the needs from a standpoint of, we have a parking that we have to try to figure out. We have to figure out if we're going to do it with lifts, if we're going to bring it into the center of the building, how are we going to handle the acoustics? We started stacking it multiple ways, and then we worked it from the backside. We put the massing over the top of the podium, and it got really big and clunky. It didn't feel as though it was as airy by trying to create some of the separation between the two structures. We then tried to pull it back the other way, where we demolished some of the other buildings, which just didn't give us any of the relief that we were looking at. So I don't mean to be so elaborate in the 35,000 foot view, but you're working with multiple needs for the site to be redeveloped as a residential project. And the acoustics, the need for commercial, the need for residential rental, and the need for trying to create a site that you could also provide the tenants with solid amenities so that they didn't feel as though they're living in a 1970s rental building, which is frankly all we have in the La Miranda area, was a lifestyle decision that was something that created the blocking and the massing for it. Down into the direct materiality, it started forming off of that by the siding and massing. Are there going to be changes to it? And do we believe that staff made wonderful suggestions? Absolutely. That's what happens with architecture. We don't get it right the first time. No one does. And multiple opinions in it help us start identifying the materiality that feels the most the most aesthetically pleasing for the change to the community that's already hard to swallow. So it's a work in progress, but we believe for the site that we're working with and how we've put it together and parked it and then created a community that can walk to multiple areas, that is not going to create a bend in transportation on the rest of the community, which I've heard is one of the biggest issues. We feel like we've done a good job so far.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions. Thank you. Thank you for
Okay. Thank you. So I think at this point, I don't see any other questions from Planning Commission. Oh, excuse me. Chair
I'm
Brett?
sorry, Chair. May I ask one more question?
Please.
If I may ask about the stacking parking system that is proposed for use, the Trend Vario system, I'd like to know if the developer has experience using this in residential projects, if it's user operated. I mean, how workable is this really as a way to solve your parking density issue?
The stacker is critical to this project. It's a three-way stacker. I don't know if you know Watchery. Watchery is our designer for this project. They're a very well-known firm as well. We figured out after really struggling with the design that we needed the help of someone like Watchery. So we are looking at the different lifts. Fortunately, there's quite a few out in the market at this point, and at the time that it really gets there, we'll make that final determination. But I think we selected a Klaus 3 stack on this building, which has been used in multiple projects in the San Francisco Bay Area, to many of the architects that I worked satisfaction, and we think it's a good solution, and Watchery is the one that really pushed on it.
Does this mean that some people have to get their neighbor to move their car so they can get out?
Potentially.
I just question the workability of that as a sort of needing a valet or something.
We don't believe that we need a valet, but Randy is raising his
Can I
hand.
speak to that?
Oh yeah, it does move, excuse me. Thank you, Randy.
So we've used, this is Klaus Parking Systems. They've been around a long time. We've done several projects in Oakland and Berkeley again, that one in Walnut Creek on Trinity and the one on Cole. And you don't, the way it works, you don't have to move your car for somebody else to get their car out. It's a horizontal and vertical kind of ice cream sandwich machine where you drive in and your car goes into your slot, and if somebody else wants their car, it shifts around like a Rubik's Cube kind of thing, and their car comes up, and it's the timing is minimal. We've done a lot of these projects. I've probably done 15 of these projects with Klaus, and in all these years since, I don't know, late 80s, we've had one problem where one pump went out, and in 24 hours it was fixed. So Klaus is, they're out of Germany, they're high quality. It's a solution to the parking problem in these small downtown sites.
Yeah, absolutely. What you're saying answers my question. Thank you.
Perfect, thanks.
Okay. Then we can, I think, maybe open it for public comment.
If you'd like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. The first speaker is Elliot Hudson, followed by Cheryl.
Okay, while we're waiting for the speaker to join, for the applicants team, just a kind suggestion would be, if possible, if you could turn on your cameras when during the next 5-minute phase, or when you're speaking. It's just nice to be able to see, not required, but if possible, appreciate it. Okay, sorry, Mr. Hudson, welcome. You
Good
have 3
evening, Jen.
minutes.
I'm frankly concerned you proceeded on this item without more full design review members present, because it presents absolutely critical design considerations, which I'm afraid you may now run out of time to fix. For many years, semi-rural ambiance has not been an explicit requirement for new development in Lafayette. That has now changed. It's changed because the city council has said so in the mission statement it unanimously adopted. And part of the reason the city council did that was because a great many Lafayette residents are distressed that we are losing the beloved special character of Lafayette in the architecture of new buildings. Day by day, we look less like Lafayette and more like Walnut Creek or some other nondescript city with blockish modern buildings. Indeed, the new building on Brown Avenue describes its architecture as timeless modernity, which is a ridiculous oxymoron, because modern by definition is not timeless, but the building is widely reviled. It is certainly inconsistent with the council's mission statement directive for semi-rural ambiance, and so is this project. This project demands that you focus on the issue of semi-rural architecture. It is massive, it is in the very center of town, and it will have an outsized impact on the character of Lafayette for the rest of our lives. As submitted, it is unimaginative, blockish, off the shelf, and for Lafayette, awful. It has nothing whatsoever to do with the semi-rural ambiance your city council has directed the city to achieve. It is absolutely imperative that this massive central project, for this one, you honor the council's directive, because this project as submitted does not even come close. As to what is semi-rural architecture in a building of this size, fortunately, you have two examples that are about as close as I think you can come. They are Town Center 2 and 1000 Dewing, which was referred to as Town Center 3 during its approval phase. Requiring something very close to those buildings has the advantage of being entirely defensible under the existing downtown design standards for a small town community feel. It is defensible as consistent with city-approved designs in the immediate area, and most importantly, using a design like those avoids bogging down in an effort to reinvent the conceptual design wheel. And save the protected trees, particularly the natives. There's nothing more semi-rural in ambiance than native oaks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Are there any questions from Planning Commission or from the DRC directly for the speaker? Okay. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Greg.
The next speaker will be Cheryl.
Okay, and sorry, applicant team, I don't feel like you need to have your camera on now. I meant like during the rebuttal part, so sorry, I wasn't clear. Okay, Cheryl, welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
All
you.
right. All right, awesome. So I was also wondering, it seemed like this was a joint planning and design review, and it seemed like the crew on board was pretty small in number. So I have concerns about that as well. And maybe we should have waited until we could have had more of everybody to attend. My question though has to do with the live work. I believe Brown Avenue is live work, and it's not allowed to have signs on the front doors, so it doesn't really make it commercial. If you put a sign on the door, it does make it commercial, and then it doesn't become a live work. So I just want to know how you're replacing office space if it's and commercial space if it's not really if the sign on the door, I'm wondering how that issue is being resolved. And I also agree that it doesn't really feel semi-rural. So those are my 3 comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Are there any questions for the speaker? Okay, seeing none. Thank you.
The next speaker is Libby Henry Lafayette.
Welcome, Libby. Can you hear us? I think you're muted.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm not connected.
We can hear you.
Yeah, now. I had I'm very, very distressed about the whole process that this is going through at the moment. First of all, everybody notes that there are only 4 out of the 5 planning commissioners present and only 2 design review. That is not a quorum, as far as I can tell. Certainly not a quorum of the DRC. So I'm wondering why commissioners are okay with that. I'm also wondering what Ms. Tran mentioned, only 4 meetings, not 5, for this process. So that seems to be 1 short of what it should be. And, the project itself on its face is so unbelievably unacceptable in every way, shape, and form that I don't know why the planning department just accepts whatever and says, oh, it's okay with us. And they keep pushing it forward. It appears that this monstrosity is going to replace the apartments that have been there since the 1960s, because I can't see any other way on the map. I mean, it must be doing that. And if that is true, has anybody considered all the people that you're going to be displacing? Because I'm sure that those people won't be able to afford the price of your development. I find it very convenient that they have their attorney present to answer any and all comments about this being unbelievably wrong, hiding behind the unconstitutional SB 330 that was written by and for developers to take advantage of cities like Lafayette, which it appears that they've done. Now, it seems like Mr. Stone sounds like he is a Lafayette resident. So it's really unbelievable to me that he would even consider 5 stories. I am very positive that you could reduce the stories by at least 1 and still achieve your objective. That in and of itself is just simply not acceptable. And the commissions should both reject that as part of the design or the plan or anything. There's no reason other than more and more profit for the developer for it to be 5 stories. There is absolutely no reason. And I don't care what Mr. Stone or Ms. Morrison say, you know, we all know what's behind all of this. There is no concern for the people of this community, no concern for the city of Lafayette, no concern for the emergency access and egress from that area, having that small driveway. If you're not going to take down the building where Poppy and
Miss Henry, if you wouldn't mind wrapping it up, because it's a little over the 3 minutes.
I didn't hear a ding, sorry. I just urge you all to try to stick to protocol. It is appropriate. There is a reason there is protocol for this, like having all the members present, and to conduct 5 meetings, not just 4. And also to consider that this is beyond the pale as far as being part of Lafayette's mission statement or general plan.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? Commissioner Heisen?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Not a direct question for the speaker, but more of a request of staff. Can, just for the record, for this item and also for any members of the public listening, can you describe the 5 meeting requirement, that it's our business has to be done within 5 hearings, and clarify that we don't have to use all 5 hearings if we're able to accomplish our business, correct?
That is correct. SB 330 sets a limit on the maximum number of meetings that a city or a local jurisdiction can hold on a project pursuant to SB 330. So the statute says a maximum of 5. So the jurisdictions are free to have no public hearings if that is how they've structured their review process, or up to 5. And that would include any body in the city of Lafayette, including Planning Commission, Design Review Commission, Public Art Committee, Creeks Committee, you name it. If any of those bodies holds a meeting and discusses the project, it goes to and toward that count. And thus inviting both the Design Review Commission and Planning Commission to participate in a single meeting economizes on the number of meetings. We are also inviting 2 bodies to the next meeting, Planning Commission and Transportation and Circulation Committees. So up to 5 meetings.
And to add to that, an appeal counts as one of the 5. It's not in addition. Thank you.
Correct. The only, yes, for the purposes of this application, since it is not a legislative act, an appeal would count towards the 5.
Commissioner Heisen, did you have other clarifying questions?
No, I just thought it was prudent that clarification be made just based on the recent comments about the 5 meetings.
Thank you, Commissioner Sturm.
Okay, piggyback another question to staff while we're clarifying. Could you speak to like the overall timeline for accomplishing these hearings? And also, I guess I'm curious as to, and I'm thinking that it ties into that, why all of the comments that staff, you can answer this later if it's not appropriate now, but the comments that staff, the design comments that staff gave to the applicant seem like they're very much in line with our downtown design guidelines and objective standards. And I was just wondering, is there a push for schedule? Is that the reason that we're seeing the project prior to any of those things being addressed, whereas, yeah.
So much of those comments were brought up in our staff review and were not addressed by the applicant, or they did choose not to address it. That's why we were bringing it back up again in the staff report.
And so as Mr. Stone stated, that he has been working on this project for a number of years and has run some iterations of schematics past staff. And I think we have consistently kind of conveyed what the design guidelines call for in the downtown. And as I think he spoke to, and you're well aware, there are tensions between many aspects of being able to design and build a viable project and minimize massing, maximizing open space, accommodating parking, all of those. And so it is common that when staff has a pre-application meeting and our comments are conveyed, or even after submittal, that those changes aren't necessary. I mean, they're certainly received by the applicant and I think listened to, and then it's a function of how and when they respond. And it is commonplace for the applicant to want to have an audience with the commission and have those comments either affirmed and reinforced, or sometimes the commissions respectfully disagree with staff and no, we don't think that actually change needs to happen, or we would approach it a different way. So they can speak to it further on how they may respond to the comments to date.
Thank you. And Mr. Stone, I do see your hand up, but since we are currently in the public comment portion, I'll ask that whatever you would like to say, that to save it till after the public comment portion has closed and you're giving your 5-minute rebuttal, if you don't mind. Okay, next public comment, please.
If anyone would like to make a comment, please go ahead. Click the raise hand button. We have no callers and seeing no hands raised.
Okay, with that, we will officially close the public comment portion. And now, Mr. Stone, your team has 5 minutes to provide any additional information or address any comments received.
Yeah, and my apologies. I unfortunately am driving to the airport on a red eye, so I'm in a car now. But the first, I went to Lafayette Elementary School. I went to Stanley. I then went to Alkalani's. I came back and lived in this community. I love this community. I love building in this community, and I love having my friends also around this community. We do not have a high turnover of residential homes in this area. And a lot of us that grew up in those school districts also would like the chance to raise families and have housing and have friends and continue to build community in a way that's consistent with the rest of the population and employment growth within the Bay Area. So I want this council to know how much I appreciate being in this community. I appreciate the opportunity to bring this project forward. I'm very open, and we will be open to making revisions to better it so that the community, staff, commissions feel that we've done a good job with the project at the end of it. And we do appreciate all of the comments that have come in, and we will itemize those and react to them in an appropriate way. Amara?
Yeah, Jeff, I think you've summarized it all. I just a gentle reminder about the subjective nature of some of the comments. I think in particular, Mr. Hudson kept referring to semi-rural ambiance, and if objective standards have to be tied to, they really are standards that involve no personal or subjective judgment on the part of the commissioners. And they have to be verifiable by an external or uniform benchmark. And I guess if reasonable minds can differ as to what constitutes a semi-rural ambiance, that by its very nature is not an objective standard. But otherwise, I think it's in your good hands for discussion tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, we will bring it to both commissions for kind of discussion of comments or, additional comments that we would like to put forth to the applicants team. I'll look to Design Review Commission first. Commissioner Cass or Chair Gray?
Glenn, do you want to start this one?
Yeah, sure. I don't know what to say other than it feels very awkward being on DRC because we have to look at objective standards. And quite honestly, it's a comment that I've made before. It's a comment I'm sure that I will make again. Our criteria on the objective standard, the objective standards are not that bad. Our way of scoring objective standards is bad. And the net result is that when we look at projects like this, no one has any problem meeting the objective standards. There's no push. It's almost automatic. You look at the points that are awarded, they're way too high. You look at points that are awarded that shouldn't even be awarded, okay? For instance, for bike racks, okay, it's a state requirement. Why are we giving points and allowing people to meet the objective standards on something that's required anyhow? Pathway lighting, what? You're going to provide 51 housing units and no lighting? These are ones that are low on the point score, but we're giving points nevertheless. So when you look at something, you say, oh, we're required to have 12 points and in 3 of the 4 areas, and they come up with 21 points in all 4 areas. Yet the building is what I classify as stubby. What I don't like is I really don't like that big, long, linear roof. I agree with the staff comments that there needs to be something done to call out the entrances better. And they agreed that they were going to do something about that. I think the fire issue is a very, very major issue. Well, hopefully the standpipe system and the other stuff will be satisfactory and make this work. So the net result is that this meets the objective standards, and I don't like it. Elliot doesn't like it. Libby doesn't like it. And we have to live with it unless we can get someone like Jeff to look at it and say, well, why do we like 100 Dewing so much better than this project? Why is 100 Dewing, which has shingles and artificial stone and a more, it's all probably almost the same mass, but it just is completely different in appearance. It doesn't have that stubby look. And that's the big issue that people, I think, see as the quote Walnut Creek architecture that they don't want creeping into Lafayette. And they look at it and they say, well, why does Danville keep a Danville look, but Lafayette is losing the battle? I applaud Jeff for the fact that they're giving very low and low subsidized units. That's something that we haven't seen on some of the other developments that have only been moderate. So that's really appreciated by myself. I wish I could have a greater, stronger endorsement. I do have acoustic issues that I have worked with Charlie Salter. He can handle them, but it does mean that some of the areas that you and I have looked at today that look like open plaza areas may not be quite so open and so much plaza. when they're enclosed with some type of plexiglass barrier or eliminated. In any event, those are my comments. I wish that other commissioners were here today, but the objective standards were met. So you would only have more commissioners giving subjective comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gray. Or sorry, Chair Gray.
Thanks. First, I'd like to say that I am certainly supportive of additional rental housing in our downtown and some amount of affordable housing as part of that. And I do like the idea of mixed use as, you know, the incentives for residential become what is most economically advantageous for developers. We are losing commercial and professional space in our downtown, which at some point is a problem that we're going to, you know, wish we hadn't been pushed this way, but we don't drive the market. This, I would say, does look like a good location for this kind of development. Unfortunately, I would say the capacity of the project site is based on the entire site, including the existing commercial building, which is a relatively low density. So this forces an increased bulk on the new building that is only occupying, you know, give or take 3/4 of the site. So this increases the bulk problem. We talk about this as a 5-story building, but the perception on Oak Hill Road is 6 stories because for much of it, we have the podium that's there. So even with the 1-story setback that's proposed at the upper floor, we have a 5-story street presence on Oak Park. On Oak Hill. As far as I'm aware, that is unprecedented in Lafayette. We do not have 5-story buildings facing our streets. Where we have 5 stories, and it's pretty uncommon, it's tucked back, it's stepped back, it's nothing that people walk by on a sidewalk. I would like to see this setback at 3 stories maximum, which means 2 stories of apartments on top of the 1 podium story at Oak Hill Road. So how do you do that and still accommodate your program? Consider stepping the building up the hill. I mean, the real height is perceived at the sidewalk at the low point of the site, but the back of the building on the west side is way up the hill and really looks more like a 3-story building. Consider taking some of the units that you have on the front facing Oak Hill and putting them on the portion of the building at the back of the site, where first of all, they're far from a street, and second, I mean, the grade is higher. So you're not going to have that same perceived height issue. And then regarding character, I mean, I have to say that the character so far, I think could use some work and some looking around. The downtown design guidelines do provide thoughts on how to do that, but I agree with Glenn that checking the boxes and getting the point score is not necessarily going to get us a building that is is the kind of character that would be appealing in this town. That's not an objective comment, I know. Let's see, pedestrian, the main pedestrian entry. I certainly agree with the staff's comment that the pedestrian entry is very much hidden. I really kind of had to scrub the plans to even find it. It's around the corner and needs to have some way of being more important. I mean, this is a pedestrian-friendly development. Its location is to support pedestrian commuters. Visitors to them coming off BART should be able to find the front door. Let's see. There is one of your units, the very low income unit, that I would describe as substandard. Your unit 103 is kind of in a hole facing a transformer and the trash bins. And quite honestly, I do not see it as viable. I will hope you can accommodate a very low income unit like that, but I think it needs to be rethought of as far as its location. I agree with staff comments regarding height variation at the roof line, perhaps consideration of stepping the building up the hill, as I'm suggesting you look at, might give you some opportunities there. And let's see, my final comment, at the north end of the 4th floor corridor on the west wing, it's kind of a strange corridor in that it's tucked behind a retaining wall, but yet it's open air. It seems like it would be dark and inhospitable I would suggest reconsidering that design and just making an indoor corridor. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Planning Commission. Commissioner Heising.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So let me start off by saying I think this is a totally appropriate location for this higher density development, especially after we just finished the whole general plan update. And we specifically were focused on higher densities in the downtown near the BART station. It helps us achieve meeting our arena numbers. And it, like I said, it achieves the city's target of higher densities in the downtown near BART. Having said that, as I brought up earlier, I too have concerns just about the massing and the height right at the right on Oak Hill. I really like Chair Gray's ideas about stepping up the hill. I don't know if it's possible, but is there a way to do 2 step backs, one at the 3rd story and maybe another one at the next story, or like Commissioner Gray said, just step it, maybe have the higher buildings towards the back up on the hill where it's less impactful to Oak Hill. I understand the bonus density law with waivers and concessions regarding physical and financial viability of the project. I guess I would ask on the concession for the art. I mean, we're talking, 235,000 is the calculated amount with a 75,000 contribution to the art fund. The delta is 160. And, I know the developer has the right to have this as a concession, but I guess I would just ask that, we are at the entry gateway to our city and to our downtown. And it's a nice opportunity to be able to have a piece of artwork there that signifies to drivers and pedestrians as they're entering our city that, voila, here you've come to Lafayette, here's a cool piece of art or a entry monument that can be art. I'm specifically thinking of that where that free right turn was coming off the freeway ramp. There was some landscaping and a Lafayette sign. The landscaping's kind of died off. It doesn't look as great as it did years ago when it was first put in, but there could be an opportunity there where the art could be combined with an entry monument of sorts coming into our town that could be off-site, but tied to the development. Just an opportunity there and food for thought for that particular concession. I like the multiple landscape gathering areas in different locations in the layout of the project, as well as the different levels. I think that's a nice touch. And it's just, I'm noting that it seems there was specific effort to do that, and it's appreciated. That's about it for now for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Other commissioners? Vice Chair LaBlanche?
I am supportive of more housing. I do think this is a good location. I'm also supportive of rental units. So I think that's nice. It doesn't matter that it's a local developer, but to be honest, it's nice. I think he grew up here, he understands it. I think there's more connection. But in standing on the site and trying to take the renderings and the massing diagrams and sitting in front of the old Blockbuster and looking to the left and imagining this massive wall in the parking lot, let alone on the street front, the first thing that came to my mind, and I should have asked, was I was trying to figure out the relative height to the freeway, like how, because I can't tell that in anything we saw whenever there's a massing that the freeway is not being shown. It doesn't really matter, but it's so hard. And we have this discussion every time we talk about these. It's so hard to tell what they really look like from these drawings. So the only thing that's given me just a little pause is Chair Gray's comment about moving someone from the front to the back. And I really think that's a brilliant idea, because our subjective control has been eviscerated. We have very little control over anything here. So I think we need to push that a little. And I say we might not all think the same, but if there's something that we don't believe in or we think is too much, I think we should push it a little. And we should be very, I feel a lot of times we've kind of passed this on because we have a lawyer on that says, oh, you have to do this and it's all has to be objective standards and you can't do anything. And we've heard how great the objective standards protect us. So I would be more willing to try to say what we think is right, and in Chair Gray's kind of description, and me trying to, and I'm not an architect, trying to look at, well, what if you put that massing on the back? Well, then if I go to the concessions and I see where it says what is a concession, it has to allow the project to be financially feasible, and then a waiver has to allow it to be buildable. I might be paraphrasing that wrong. So what's to say that asking an applicant to do that precludes them from still being able to do that? And I think we ought to challenge that more if that's what we really believe. And I am not comfortable with how tall it is in the front. Would I like them to get 51? I don't really care, but I don't like how tall it is in the front. So anything we can do to kind of push that down or push that back. And I mean, before we just say yes, I think there need to be a little more. I mean, I just looked at the massing and just in my mind cut off 2 floors and moved into the back, and it looked like it stepped up in uniform. Then instead of kind of crunching as it went up, it just went parallel. I don't know what that would really look like in life, but I know the front. I mean, you architects know because you guys think that way. In the front, it would be lower. We know that. So I would be willing to push back on that and see if we could get the applicant to work with us on it. The only other minor comment I had is I saw in the very first page of the package where it shows the access points in the road directions. This is on page A1.2. It shows the access. So coming out of the commercial building that you could exit and you could go left on Oak Hill or right. Right now it says when you're there, there's a right only arrow, and that's for good reason. When you come off the freeway, and I'm assuming everyone on this call has done this once before. First of all, you have to make sure you don't get T-boned from the left. So you're looking left while you go right. It'd be the exact same thing from someone coming out here. That's probably why there's a right only there. So I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of that I would assume that's a right only for a reason from before. It shouldn't change in this. So we probably shouldn't show the left out onto Oak Hill on that one. But that's actually minor. I mean, it's a safety issue, but going back to the bigger points about pushing back on the look and the massing, I'm very much in support of doing that without necessarily sacrificing number of units. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sturm, did you have comments?
Thank you. I actually don't have a lot to add. I thought all of our comments that have been issued so far are pretty harmonious, and I agree with all of them, including staff's recommendations. So I won't repeat things that other people already said. I guess the few things that I will add are that I think the idea of looking at starting from the street face and working back and seeing if there's a way to stair step the massing as Commissioner Gray was discussing. And I think that that's a massing solution that we've talked about in the housing element, and we've talked about in other projects that are adjacent to the freeway and in this way. So I feel like it could work. The one thing, this project is taller than other projects that we've seen. So I would just want to make sure that it wouldn't appear as sort of like a lone tower from the freeway vantage point. So something to be for the applicant to look at it if they start to study this. And I too think that the massing and the design just need more work. I don't feel that when I look at it, I don't see Lafayette. I don't see anything that's representative of Lafayette. And we, our goal is to have varied building designs in the downtown. So there's opportunity for modern to more traditional looking buildings, but this one, I appreciate what the applicant team said about like the ideas behind how they got to what they're presenting to us at this point. But I think that, it needs more massaging. I think it looks fairly commercial, especially the two long elevations. You don't want to have a building with two different faces, but I think there's a way as they start to study this massing and they start to add, more details and hopefully more elements to soften the massing, even if they can't actually decrease the massing. I think that I'd like to see some response to like the freeway side versus the Mount Diablo side. I mean, usually we're talking about a situation where we have like commercial development and backs into a neighborhood. And so we're always talking about stair stepping the height, building height. And I think maybe something like that could be done, or if they're stair stepping sort of up, that would achieve that. But there's other things that can be added to the building just to soften the edges and sort of just make it relate more to downtown. And Commissioner Labange's, I think, his comment about the outdoor spaces, or Commissioner Heising, sorry. I agree with that too. And something as those spaces are developed more, I think if they can, while being planted with drought tolerant plants, also become sort of areas of green relief to help mitigate the massing of this building, that would be excellent. And then to Commissioner Labange's point that these buildings are, even with all of the drawings that are in this presentation, they are sometimes hard to really get a sense of, especially without story poles and the like. So when this comes back, I think if there were some street vantage point perspective views, that would be really helpful. And also sections through the freeway, because I think that's going to be something that we look at really closely the next time. I think that's all I have for right now.
Okay, thank you. I wish I would have thought to ask staff earlier, but the October 3rd meeting is in roughly 2 weeks, right? Or it is in 2 weeks. So the comments that are being provided tonight, does that give the applicant's team enough time to address some of the comments that then I'm just going to call it a revised project or an amended project is what we see at the joint Transcert Planning Commission meeting? Or is the intent that the applicant's team listens to comments tonight, listens to comments at the October 3rd meeting, and then makes any revisions? Like I said, I wish I would have thought to ask this earlier.
So the turnaround for them is fairly short since it's 2 weeks out. They really only have a week to provide any revisions to have it published for Planning Commission to review and for Transcert to review. But since it would be coming back to the Planning Commission again, they would certainly have time for third meeting with Planning Commission to kind of finalize that. And that date has to be determined. It's really up to the Planning Commission and the applicant to see how much time they can realistically provide revisions.
Has this timeline for the October 3rd meeting been discussed ahead of time with the applicant? I mean, I know it's in our staff report, or, in our agenda, but I'm sure you can appreciate the point I'm trying to make, that moving forward with another meeting when comments are lingering, that could then potentially affect other portions. I'm just curious.
They are amenable to the October 3rd, but we haven't discussed beyond that.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is they may or may not be able to make revisions before October 3rd, but we have the ability to have a third planning commission involved meeting after the October 3rd meeting. Vice Chair LeBlanc, just your hand up.
Yeah, I think that's a dangerous game to play because we only have 5 bullets here. Bullets is not a good analogy. We only have 5 meetings. And if they're not ready, and again, I like this project, I want to see it go forward, but I don't want it to be ramrod down because we run out of meetings. So I would suggest we give them enough time to be prepared at the next meeting. We only have 5 meetings. They need to be prepared. So if unless there's some, I know we have an overall clock too, but we're not in danger of that, are we yet?
We're not.
So I mean, I think we'd be smart here if we gave them time to address the comments we've made so that there's a meaningful next meeting and we don't use our 1 extra meeting to just find out that they weren't prepared because we didn't give them enough time.
Yeah, can I ask, so for the October 3rd date, is there a reason why that agenda or that date was specifically chosen? Because I have that's the concern that I have, that we're giving a lot of great feedback, and the whole point of the process is to provide feedback from different commissions. And at what point do we see any of the feedback addressed? So something to think about.
Your point's well taken, and there's nothing. We are not running up against the overall deadline anytime soon, and your point about giving them the opportunity to actually be able to respond to the commissioner's comments is well taken. I don't think there's anything driving the October 3rd date, other than trying to get input from the other commissions that would want to have some input and comment responsibility. And so I think the commission could continue it to the 17th rather than the 3rd.
Okay, something to think about for a motion. Vice Chair LeBlanc, did you have something else? Your hand was up.
I didn't, but I do. So if I could real quick.
Sure.
If the direction out of this was to ask the applicant to say backload a little of the front loaded upper stories, my assumption would be, and this is kind of the staff, that they would have to either do that or come to us with the reason why they think they can't, and therefore they're still protected by SB 330. And so, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but is there any actual checking on if someone says something isn't feasible? Like, it seems a little squishy to me that, I mean, what's the threshold? Does that is that something that has to be, tested in the courts someday to find out what that really means? Where some city says, nope, we're not doing it, and they vote against it, and they go to a lawsuit, and somebody, court, sets a precedent what feasibility is, because it's not black and white, or if it is, I'm not familiar with that. So I guess that's my question, because I think we should I'm asking that we do something, and this will come in the form of a motion to ask them to push it back a little bit. And I really hope with this extra time that they do it.
Vice Chair Labange, that's also speaking to my point of what the comments, and I haven't provided mine yet, but the comments that we are providing tonight aren't as simple as only changing a color or something. And so I think to make the meetings worth the time for both the applicant and staff and the commissions, that it makes sense to provide enough time rather than a 1 week turnaround. And I know, I mean, we've seen many projects from this team, from the developers team, and they are able to produce, you know, projects that ultimately work. And I think it's only fair that we give the time to allow for that to potentially happen.
I'm just guessing based on what you said that maybe I didn't make, I don't know. That didn't seem to be where I was going. So I think maybe I crossed over.
Okay.
My question was totally in agreement. Yeah, we say, hey, we'd like you to do something, and here's the extra time. Let's assume that that's what we come out of with tonight. You know, we haven't all agreed on that, but assuming we do that now, in 4 weeks, they come back and they say, hey, you know what? We couldn't do it. We looked at it. It's not feasible. Sorry. So we're back to what we showed you before. I'm just trying to get a little more thought into it because this is so new for us. We've never really been up against that where we've said, hey, we've got a better mousetrap for you. And someone comes back and says, nope, doesn't work.
I mean, we have provided comments, like, and then applicant teams have come back, but is there anything staff would like to chime in on that, on Vice Chair's comment / question?
I don't believe there is that the statute is 100% clear with what the city can and cannot ask for. And certainly when, you know, I think what you've heard is that the applicant is willing to and values all of your comments and will explore them and do what they can to accommodate all of them, considering all of the other competing factors that go into a project. So to my knowledge that this kind of area of state law has not been tested in case law yet, but I can ask the city attorney and get more information.
So we'll just find out, which is fine. I was just curious if we had. Okay, thank you.
Chair Gray?
Yeah, thanks. From my point of view, I would like to see the applicant have a chance to develop an alternative, as we all have been discussing. As an architect, I do not see any reason it's not feasible. I was looking at their plan and there's some obvious ways of doing it. I don't think it's asking for anything too far out. And I would also ask them to come back and prepared with their fire and life safety solution that is vetted to the point that they have confidence it's going to work. And you know, if they can do that in 3 weeks to be ready for a meeting 4 weeks from now, that seems to make sense.
Thank you. I will just provide a couple additional comments that I had. Like Mr. Stone, I grew up going to all the schools in Lafayette. My kids have gone through all the schools in Lafayette, or both are in high school right now. So I get wanting to be able to be back in Lafayette. I do think having new, clean, nice rental units is awesome. With that said, I do wish it was more than 6 affordable units, only because the more the better, in my opinion, but 6 is the minimum required. The building to me feels very bulky for 51 units. So I do like the idea of hopefully the applicant's team being able to take another look at stepping the building per other comments that we've heard tonight. Let me see what else I wrote. Oh, I also really liked Commissioner Heising's comment about the public art, and it is, you come off the freeway and this is going to be the first thing you see. I do think if there's any way to incorporate a piece of public art beyond the $75,000, that would be great for the project and for the city. One thing that I didn't hear tonight, and it'll probably come up in the Transcirc meeting, I don't think it's necessarily the responsibility of this project, but that off-ramp is awful. Vice Chair LaBonge kind of mentioned, when you're coming off the freeway, you get to the stop. After you stop, you still have to go forward beyond the crosswalk to even see to your left, north, to see if cars are coming down south on Oak Hill Road. If there's anything that can be done to improve the safety of that crosswalk, that would be great. Again, I don't know if it's 100% the responsibility of this project, but as we continue to get more growth in Lafayette, that is all centered around public transit and location and proximity to BART. It would be great to have safe pedestrian crossings. I think it was Chair Gray who brought up Unit 103. I also noticed Unit 103 in the location. To me, it just seems very thrown in there. Like, oh, it's a below market rate unit. It could go here by the trash dumpster. So hopefully that can be reconsidered, the location. I also appreciated a comment. It would be nice to see renderings or this point of view from the street and also a cross section with the freeway. I have those same thoughts. Just checking my notes here. Yeah, overall, I personally think Mr. Stone's projects for single family are great. I am not a fan of the multifamily projects in Lafayette. However, I understand the projects, and just because I'm not a fan doesn't mean that they're not good projects. And I do think this is a great location for a project, and I hope that the comments tonight can be taken into consideration. And it might also encourage the city to reevaluate the objective standards, because it's not only this project that has to adhere to them. So those are my comments. Anything else before we entertain a motion? Oh, actually, sorry, one more thing. Nancy, there was a comment, and I apologize, who asked this question about what noise contour the project site falls in from the general plan.
Yes, I looked at it and they are within the 75 decibel contour.
Okay.
So I'll just add on the information that's from the 2002, so 20 years ago, general plan map was generated actually from a much earlier noise element. And it was, I'll say, blunt in its projections of noise contours stemming from the freeway and BART. So that is not a site-specific noise assessment by any means.
Thank you for the clarification.
But it's my I think we heard the developer say that they were engaging with a acoustical engineer to actually take on-site readings and respond to the noise environment that would impact the project.
Thank you. I heard that as well. And then I guess just while we're clarifying things for the record, if staff wouldn't mind just speaking very briefly to what is considered a quorum for Planning Commission, what's considered a quorum for Design Review Commission, and why tonight, as voting members, it was imperative that the Planning Commission have a quorum.
Well, the Planning Commission is
or otherwise it's going to meet, but yeah.
There are 7 members of the Planning Commission when fully staffed, if you will. And thus a quorum is 4, and you would need a quorum of members present to convene the meeting. DRC is 5 members, thus you would need a quorum of 3 to convene a meeting and take any action. If there's no action being taken, those members present can still voice their comments, but they're not taking any vote action. So a quorum need not be present.
Great, thank you. Okay. Is anyone interested in making a motion for tonight? Or I'm happy to kind of restate what's in the agenda if that's helpful. Okay, I just lost my file here.
I think
Okay.
what staff has heard is that there was a general consensus around giving the applicant the time to respond to the commission's comments, and thus a continuance to October 17th would be our recommendation. So you can say so moved if you so desire, or put out a revision or a different motion altogether.
Commissioner Heisen.
Yeah, I'm willing to make a motion that we continue the item to October 17th with all the comments made here tonight for the applicant to consider.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Heisen.
Can I add a friendly adder? Is it that?
Amendment.
Just
amendment.
Adder, yeah, a friendly adder, please.
Okay, and that would be with specific attention to the massing portion, as well as everything else we brought up, because I don't want that to be lost.
Sure, that's okay. Yeah, I think we were pretty obvious in that, but yeah, we can just to punctuate it.
Okay, then I second your motion.
Okay.
As amended.
A motion by Commissioner Heisen, friendly amendment, and the second by Vice Chair Labange for the slightly amended motion. Roll call vote. Commissioner Heisen.
Aye.
Commissioner Sturm.
Aye.
Vice Chair Labange.
Aye.
Chair Radnich. I'm an aye. So thank you. At this point for DRC, I think it makes sense just to stay on. We have about 3 more minutes left. Item 8, other business, ARC volunteer for September 30th from Planning Commission. I can probably do it that day. Just double check. I can do that one. Commissioners reports, I can start off. The GPAC meeting that would have been tomorrow has been canceled. So the next meeting will likely be October 18th, if I'm doing my math right. That's all I have for the GPAC. Are there any other commissioner updates? Commissioner Sturm?
I just wanted to mention the October 3rd thing, that the conflict that I had emailed you and Greg about, just for scheduling in case there's other things that might fall on that agenda. On Monday, October 3rd, the League of Women Voters is holding a candidates forum for the school board candidates. So I just wanted to notify staff, because it seems like something that Lafayette, would give a conflict for Lafayette voters. So if there's not anything that has to be heard on that day, I think it'd be nice to not have a meeting.
Okay, something for staff to know and consider. Any other planning commissioner reports? Okay, planning director's report.
Nothing to report this evening.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. At 10:30 officially, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.